Yeah, break it down. What? Yeah. Had a great day today. No other way to describe it. Had a real great day today. I woke up. I went down to go get some shoes. Had a great meditation session. Had a great. Had a great. I went and got Conton. Good to see you, bud. I went and got some chicken wings. There's a place by here every Wednesday. They do half-price chicken wings. Went and got myself some chicken wings. Had a lovely walk. It's a beautiful, beautiful, gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous day out. And so I had a wonderful, beautiful walk around on the beach and around. Picked myself up a corncob pipe. That's going to be very nice. Yeah. So, and came home, played a little bit of a video game called Endless Legend. Played with my little dog. Got him out for a good walk. And now here I am. You ever had cauliflower buffalo wings? I've never had. I have cauliflower crust on my pizza, so I have that going for me because I have a gluten intolerance, so I can't have crust. So, and cauliflower crust is really good. It seems to me like there's a big people really realized all at once. Hey, we can do cauliflower lots of things, and that's gluten free, and so that kind of replaces gluten for lots of people. And I've never had cauliflower buffalo wings, but I definitely give it a shot. I've been impressed by cauliflower so far. Conrad, good to see you. Staz, good to see you. And another really good thing to report is that simply asking for donations absolutely works. People, I think, want to participate, and they want to donate, and they want to do these kinds of things. And just telling people, please like the stream, right? Please like. Please share, please subscribe, hit the bells, hit the whistles, and if you want to donate, it's in the Patreon. Telling people that if you want someone out in the world who is actually acting on your behalf, acting politically towards the objectives that I talk about here, then you got to donate. You got to donate. Even $1 helps. It's in the Patreon. And you say that once an hour, people do it. Good to see you, Conrad. Well, I wish me the best too, bud. I wish you the best. I hope that things are going really well. Dude, I know, and I'm not trying to insult you, Conrad. Please take what I'm about to say with all of the love that I have to give. But every single time I look at your icon, it looks like McDonald's to me. Like, I know it isn't. I know it's not McDonald's, okay? But that's what it looks like to me. And then there's a little part of my brain that's just like, man, I haven't had McDonald's in forever. You go get some McDonald's. No. Bread Bunny, good to see you. I hope you're well too. I hope you're well too out in the world. I had a really beautiful day today. Today has been a really beautiful day, and I'm hoping it's going to continue being beautiful. I got a workout in. For the first time in like a week and maybe a half. I got like a pretty solid workout in. I think tomorrow I'm going to go even harder. I can feel that my body is finally getting back into the like, oh, let's get back into it. And I'm really, 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 really looking forward to it. So, and I think that there is just like, recently I've been, as I'm coming out of the winter torpor, right? And I always have like that seasonal depression thing that we all talk about and all of that. And as we're coming out of that, I can feel in my consciousness that as long as I keep doing what I'm doing and I keep believing in what I'm doing with this channel, that it will work. And I have to continue believing that it will work. That continuously moving forward. Well, Bread Bunny, that's very kind of you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Continuously moving forward with this, there's always a little part of me that's like, it's going to fail. But recently I've really started to understand and recognize that I don't think so. I think it is going to work. That I just need to remain agile and make good decisions for myself. McDonald's Democratic Republic, exactly. JJ, good to see you, bud. Can you explain historical materialism for dummies? I mean, historical materialism is the entire idea is that you use what happened in history and evidence for your decision making, right? Like, I know that sounds fairly reductive, but if it's for dummies, it means that you don't make decisions based on like what Jordan Peterson has to say. You don't make decisions based on some kind of like abstract philosophy of what is meaning and what are ideas and thoughts and who am I. You make your decisions based on there are objects that exist in the world, there are physical things that exist in the world that you don't say, well, Jesus Christ is going to look down on us and think this about us. You say, people work jobs, those jobs produce material, and those material are used for this, and this has this effect, right? And your analysis of what is going on in the moment, in the now, in the today, is based off of what exists in the world and what happened yesterday. That you can see, especially among lots of conservative types, they really love to say, like, oh, that happened so long ago. You get a lot of that, especially when you're talking about the history of black culture in America. You get a lot of, oh, that happened so long ago. And it's like, not really. Like, it didn't actually happen that long ago. And we know about the idea of generational trauma. We know about these sorts of things. And we use historical materialism to explain how economic structures change. Yeah, and to observe and to talk about how they have changed over time. Like, we haven't always been a capitalist structure, right? It used to be monarchies, the feudal structure. And then before that was the slave structure. That in the West, the history of the West, if you go all the way back to like the Roman Empire, is a shifting from a slave structure, a slave society. That's the core economic structure of the Roman Empire. It was all based on slavery, and they would fund military expeditions into Europe in order to get more slaves into the empire, right? And then the concept is that you just buy people, and people are your servants, and you can do what you like. And then that transitions into feudalism because they tie people from, they make it so it's no longer legal to own a person, and that a person is actually tied to land or production, if you prefer, right? And that land becomes how people are bought and sold. You become a serf that's tied to the land, and a person can buy like a farm field, and you come with the farm field. So you're not directly owned by the Lord. The Lord owns the land, and the land owns you. And that eventually erects a monarchical feudal system, which then eventually transitions into a capitalist system. And the capitalist model, the major shift that happens under capitalism is that the legal authority of the monarchy no longer holds the most amount of weight. And the concept of that is that the merchants and the manufacturers become the ones that have the authority, that they are the ones that own the land and own the property. And there are still many kind of feudal exchanges that happen. Like, if a new owner comes in and buys your business, you go with the business. And there are things that have changed, obviously. Like, it used to be that if you wanted to leave the land, you needed to do so at the behest of the Lord. Whereas now, if you want to leave your job or leave the land, you can just do that. And in some cases, that's not the case. But the major change from feudalism to capitalism was the who got to own the means of production. That previously everything was done at the behest of the monarch, and then it became the merchants and manufacturers. And if you want to get even deeper, it really is like what you end up having fairs. Like, you have little cities all over the place, right? Like, you've got cities and towns all over the place, and they want to do trade with one another. And so what they do is they all gather in one spot to become, to have a fair. Are you going to Scarborough Fair? Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. That's what they're talking about. They're talking about going to a fair, and a medieval fair would be a collection. It would be a very commercial endeavor. And then eventually, as that process continued, the commercial people just stayed there. They didn't go back home. They just erected a smithy right there, right? And so you end up with communities that begin to erect around these commercial fairs that happened all throughout Europe. This is a pretty common thing that occurred. And those fairs began being controlled by the merchants and manufacturers, by the people who owned the businesses, by the people that owned the smithies, by those people. And they began to seriously challenge the authority of the crown. And it's from there that capitalism springs out. And that the whole concept of private manufacturers and private owners should be able to do things without the government's interaction. Well, that goes all the way back to the monarchy. It's literally how capitalism starts. That government oversight is not something that the merchants and manufacturers want to tolerate. And then eventually, the merchants and manufacturers become more powerful than the monarchies simply because they own more stuff and they own more land, and that the monarchs didn't really understand that the power of owning the means of production. And so in many ways, capitalism still benefits from its sort of previous feudal position. Like, we're still owned by owners. We're just not owned by a lord, we're owned by a CEO. That a lot of the names have changed, but the interactions have stayed fairly similar. And don't get me wrong, capitalism is a superior system to feudalism, for sure. That's not deniable. And every economic system lives, dies, and gets replaced, absolutely. And what's wild, of course, is that like people still argue in favor of monarchies. And so when there was a transition from monarchy to from the feudal system to the capitalist system, once that transition happened, there were people who were saying, like, oh, the Lord provides us so many services, right? You critique the Lord, and yet you eat the Lord's grain, right? And what we're really finding out, and Rusty, I think you're onto it, neo-feudalism, here we come, is that capitalism will persist for a while, but eventually it does collapse back into a feudal structure. That as the wealth gathers under smaller and smaller hands, those, like, Bill Gates is not much different than a king. Like, really, there's not really much difference between someone like Bill Gates. It's the acknowledgement is the only thing. Like, it's just that we haven't said, oh, it's Lord Gates of the Manor. Like, we haven't done that. We still sort of pretend like, yeah, he's a private citizen, just like the rest of us. Meanwhile, he is the #1 farmland holder in America. Like, I actually make the argument that Bill Gates is stronger than probably every European monarch that ever existed. That my question moving forward into the new era is literally, what's to stop these guys from erecting like private military forces? Like that's the thing that's going to, I think, really fuck everybody up. That right now we sort of have this belief that it's like, no, there's the American military, and then there's like local police forces, and that's it. It's like, no. Like, what's to stop Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates or Muskie from picking up random private police and private mercenary groups and creating a mercenary force or a military force that's more powerful than local forces? Like, what's to stop them from privatizing the military? Nothing, right? Like, and I expect that is how it's going to go down, by the way. Like, I don't think that these guys are going to continue ceding authority to the American military for forever. They have way too much power. They have way too much wealth. They're going to try to become independent, right? Like, they want the government off their back. Well, that includes the military. Bread Bunny says, I'm more likely, even in poverty, to respond to your plea for donations. Well, don't put yourself out than I am to like a video just because you ask more. I feel more willing to sacrifice my own resources than I am to submit myself and reinforce my cultural icon submission to the more systemic and dehumanizing forms of monetization, such as forcing to rate everything and demand ratings. Yeah, I know, dude. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not happy about it, but I just had like a real realization moment. And I've been going through this sort of midlife crisis, and I've been going through like, what is my life and what is this all about? And oh my God, I could definitely just stay in this kind of thing. And I've just come to recognize that, like, look, if I want this to be what I do, or to be the public version of what I do, and then also have time to be able to go and challenge political power and actually organize and actually, if I want to be able to do that, then I need support from viewers. I need people to see what I'm doing and give me money for it. And if I don't ask for it, it's not going to happen. And so I'm not happy about it. I wish that nobody had to do that. I wish that everybody had their basic needs and necessities taken care of, and we could all just gather and discuss what we're supposed to do with the means of production and discuss what we're supposed to do with all of these things. But that's not how it works. That we have owners, and the system is that the people who have the most money win. And so if you want to play the game, you got to get money. And so that's why I ask for donations. If you donate to the Patreon down below, you're supporting a guy out there who's going to look at these neo-fascists and say, hey, maybe get fucked. Like, maybe get totally bent, right? Do you think there's any of that happening in the political class right now? No. JJ says, what about dialectical materialism? I've listened to a few lectures on it, but struggling to fully understand it. I honestly think, JJ, that what happens is that people think it's more complex than it actually is. You're so used to interacting with the concept of economics, listening to somebody who is describing something that sounds complex because neoliberal economics tries to make it way more complex than it actually is. And so and you're not the only one, and I hope I don't offend you by saying that, but it really does seem like people think it should be complex, and then when you listen to somebody talking about it, you go, it can't be that. Like, it can't be so reductively easy. Like, it can't be just so straightforward. And it is. That economics is actually very straightforward, and it's not very, like, if you get, the deeper you go, the more complex it gets, obviously. But you also have to peel away layers of people who are intentionally making it complex on purpose in order to obfuscate the conversation. Because they know that they can't have a serious discussion about Marxism. Because if they have a serious discussion about Marxism, then they know that they don't really have a counter argument. Like, that's why the libertarian right can't engage with Marxism. That's why right-wingers and fascists can't really engage with what Marxists say. Because if they did, they would understand pretty quickly that, oh, my position is that people should be owned, right? And once you understand that that's your position, that people should be owned, right? And that, like, somebody like Ben Shapiro essentially defends the idea that people should be owned and there should be people who are bought, that there should be wage slaves in the society, that that's a good thing, and that people just need to grind set and work harder if they don't want to be that, and just become the capitalist, right? This is what they say. These are their arguments, right? Thank you, John. I appreciate that, bud. Oh, well, that's very kind of you. Thank you, John. I appreciate it. I'll send you a link to my Discord at the end of the show. Listening to this while playing foosball is great. Fantastic. Yeah, I was actually talking about, like, I was thinking about this while I was giving my dog a walk, that the reason why the far right, which in this day and age is essentially all the media entirely, is so incoherent and stupid, is because they keep trying to find narratives that sidestep what is obviously happening. And to loop it back to your kind of point, right? It is actually very straightforward. That you take a look at what is happening, and you base your opinion on what is happening based on what is actually occurring in front of you. Like, I know that sounds really dumb. It sounds so reductive and simple, but you're living in a society where there are lots of people that are like, Jesus Christ is coming back at any moment. You need to get yourself right with your Lord and Savior, because when Jesus Christ comes back and walks around this earth, he's going to take one look into your eye and he's going to condemn you into the pits of hell. And so if you want to make sure that you get saved by Jesus Christ and his grace, you need to give $55 to Lord John's Demon Barbecue. Like this is, and that's like literally one generation back. That was like the number one way of looking at the world. That people would be like, please Jesus, give us the grace of your goodness and all that. Please send an angel. Send an angel down to earth, Lord, and protect me from the evils of the world, right? Like that, this is a serious thing that people said and thought. And that like the churches, especially during Mark's time, think about the churches during Mark's time, like they are powerful institutions that have a way of like they want you to think about yourself as a subservient to spiritual forces primarily, right? And then you also have in the modern era, because that's sort of fallen away to a degree, but in the modern era now you have guys walking around being like, the real problem about what's going on in the society is the postmodernists and the cultural Marxists. They want to make sure that the chaos like Jordan Peterson's literally walking around talking about chaos dragons, dudes. Like he's literally walking around about like order is the force of the enlightened individual who has inside of their heart the feeling of the masculine. Like, so in that environment where the icons of the society are essentially lunatics talking about nonsense, along comes a way of looking at the world that essentially says, you know what we should do? That we shouldn't bother talking about things like order, chaos, right? We shouldn't bother talking about spiritual, like where do we go when we die, right? We shouldn't even really bother talking about the moral implications of what the individual has. What we should talk about is what exists in the world, what is here, and how does the existence of those things cause people to act. That, and again, it sounds so stupid and it sounds so simple, but that's what it is. That you look at the history of what occurred, and then you think to yourself, does that have something to do with how people are currently acting? That if you walked into a room and it was full of, I don't know, little creatures. Let's just say like cute little creatures, right? And you walked into the room and they took one look at you and they all freaked out and ran away and hid. And every time they looked at you, they were like, oh, they were scared. You would think to yourself, I bet you something happened to these guys. Someone like me probably did something to them. And then if you looked at their history, if you somehow had a look at their history and you saw, you could be like, yep, someone like me did something to them, and it's pretty straightforward. Or you could walk into the room and just be like, these fucking idiots, they always run around and do stupid shit whenever I show up. They're too stupid to do anything, that's fine. Like, they're not even really sentient, really. They're so stupid, they just run around acting like idiots, so it's okay to enslave them. Like, and humans have thought this way in the past. We have walked into societies and just enslaved the people and thought that they're basically subhuman. They're better off being enslaved. I literally had somebody tell me 2 weeks ago that the people of Africa were better off for being colonized. Like, this is common to think about. And it's like, well, probably not. Like, probably not. That you could take a look at their history and take a look at their development and understand where they are as people based on that, right? So and I mean, it's wild, right? Like as I'm talking about it right now, it's really, really wild that I genuinely need to convince people in the world, hey, maybe we should think about what exists and how that changes how people act in the world. And like, here's a very clear example. People look at a place like Cuba, right? And they'll be like, "Wow, communism failed in Cuba. Well, total failure in Cuba." It's like, there's a sanction regime, right? Right? There's a sanction regime, right? Like, that's a thing that exists that is being enforced by a giant military power, right? Like, probably has something to do about that, don't you think? Like, but I mean, we're dealing with lots of people who don't like evidence in the first place. We're literally trying to convince these guys that climate change is real. And so, like, when you have an ethos and a system of an economic idea that begins with, we should use evidence in order to think about the world, if you're dealing with people who don't give a shit about evidence, who don't care about the realities of what is happening in the world, well, then you'll be at odds with them, right? Like, they believe in their kooky little ideology, which is, and I've said it so many times, that it's the worship of money, the worship of the individual, all packaged together in the worship of stupidity. That the worship of stupidity is what binds the worship of the individual and the worship of money together. And if the reason why we struggle to break this apart is because if you produce evidence, and there's so much evidence to show that their belief system is wrong, a single game of Monopoly would do it. They can't process it and they can't take it in, and so they have to be stupid. Like, it's not that they're stupid, therefore. It's that they have a weird, kooky little ideology based on the worship of money and the worship of the individual that must be maintained by stupidity. They have to be stupid, or else the whole thing falls apart immediately. And if you actually took a look at, like, a one-pager, played one game of Monopoly with the mind that this is how it works, like, it would fall apart immediately, right? Like, just instantly. It's like there was a recent episode of Rick and Morty where Morty ends up being the king of the sun, who and all of the people on the sun believe that the solar system rotates around this scepter, and so Morty just explains how the universe actually works, gravitational forces, and then just shows them where the scepter, shows them the scepter, but on the Earth. And it just destroys their entire system of belief right away, because it's completely undeniable evidence right in front of their face. But libertarians, what they'll do is they'll take a look at the undeniable evidence and then find a way around it. And, of course, what they say sounds stupid, because it has to be, because it's contrary to direct evidence that's directly in front of your face. Like, imagine if saying 1 + 1 = 2 meant that your entire belief system fell apart. Well, then you've got to pretend like 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. So you have to be stupid. You have to, or else your entire belief system falls apart. And that's essentially where we find ourselves right now. We find ourselves ruled by people who have a very kooky, strange, weird, like, on the same level as believing Jesus Christ is coming back, that money matters more than breathable air, arable land, food you can actually eat that doesn't make you fat or sick, that you live in a society that's stable, calm, where everybody's discussing what should happen, right? That all of that should be destroyed utterly to the very foundations of whether or not humans are going to be able to survive in the environment we are creating. We should destroy all of that so that you can get dollars on a screen. Not even paper anymore, not even coins. Literally digital numbers that you can punch into a computer. We should destroy the material reality of our existence for that. And the individual who has the most amount of those dollars is considered the best person. And the only way to maintain any of this is to be the stupidest person on the planet. You have to be so stupid to believe that the way forward is to destroy the land, destroy the water, destroy the air, and destroy yourselves in the process. But that's who we are, and that's what we're doing. And that's the number one ideology that exists in our society. espoused by the highest possible levels. It's what the President of the United States believes. It's what the entire opposition party believes. It's what all business owners across America believe. It's what all the quote-unquote intellectuals across America believes. It's what the media believes. It's the number one belief system that exists in the world today. That we should destroy everything that matters for shit we made up in the first place. For a fucking video game. For a board game that we made. Like, and the people who are the best are the people who are the best at destroying the entire species. Like, this is what we're doing. So if you want somebody out in the world who thinks that maybe we shouldn't do that, think about donating to my Patreon. Make sure you like the stream, guys. Ugh. How dare China put their country between all those U.S. military warships? Absolutely. Many are bots from a CIA server spread all over the internet espousing fascism and not understanding communism. I mean, I think there is something to that. Like, I would be surprised to find out that the CIA is doing like a bot campaign across the internet. We know about the alt-right pipeline. Like, we know that they have gotten involved into video game culture, which is like not difficult to understand. Like, Call of Duty is essentially like rah-rah fascism. The whole thing is about how awesome fascism is. And like, let's go into other people's countries and blow them up, and it's the greatest thing in the world, you know? So JJ says, so that is the theory. What are some examples of the theory in practice? I heard a professor talk about mutations and evolution can point about how revolutions are natural. This is kind of what I'm talking about, right? Like, especially in today's capitalist society, right? Everyone wants to espouse something that is new and different and hip and cool, and they wanna be interesting, right? And so they come up with ways to communicate about what's going on that titillate the mind, right? That like Peterson is an exemplar at this. He does very well at this, where he takes very simple concepts and then finds very complex ways to discuss them, so that it's like you have to go through like a maze or like solve a puzzle or pull things apart to get down to the base of what it is he's talking about. And then when you do, it's usually stuff like, don't yell at your kids, like real like basic simple stuff for like, the make your bed shit. Like, make your bed, okay, it'll make you feel better. Yeah, it does. That's great. Like that's certainly how we're going to confront the structural inequities that exist within the capitalist system. Everybody just needs to fucking make their bed, right? Got it. And I feel that way about this, where professors talking about mutations and evolutions can point about how revolutions are natural. I mean, to me, it just sounds like isn't it funny how when something goes bad in a communist society or a socialist society, it's the fault of communism or socialism? Right? Something happens, something goes bad, something goes wrong in a communist society. Well, that's communism for you. But if something goes wrong in a capitalist society, oh, well, that's human nature. That's how evolution goes. That's science. You can't get away from that, right? You can't get away from that. It's funny how that works, isn't it? There is something called capitalist realism, which is a book that was written, I forgot the name of the author that wrote the book, but he just basically points out that we live in a society that believes very strongly that capitalism is itself a force of nature, that it's a natural force. It's just natural. There's nothing you can do about it because it just naturally comes out of human nature. That anything that happens under capitalism, you can't push back against. There's nothing you can do about it because this is just how humans act. And so what you're actually doing, Mark Fisher, thank you, John, so what you're doing if you're trying to change the capitalist system, what you're actually doing is trying to overturn human nature itself. And that's a very dangerous thing, and that can't be done, right? Like, you've heard Shapiro say this, you've heard Peterson say this, right? This is what they say. That if you try to upend the capitalist system or the capitalist model, you're upending human nature itself. And this concept of capitalist realism I mean, it's falsifiable on the face of it, right? That like the idea that we live in the end of history under capitalism. Well, they said the same thing with feudalism, that this is the end of history, and oh well, you can't change the feudal structure, you can't change the divine rights of king. Like this is an inalienable thing. This is God Himself chose these people to be our leaders, right? And we found out that that was nonsense. Just how we're finding out that it's nonsense that capitalism is a natural that springs out of human nature naturally. And of course, it's a stupid argument in the first place because so what if it does? Like, so what if it does? We make all kinds of laws. Like, it's natural for humans to kill one another. It's natural for humans to want to kill one another. Does that mean we shouldn't make a law that says don't kill one another? Does that mean that we shouldn't actually try to make it so that we have a society where people don't kill one another? Is that what I'm hearing? Like, so what if it springs out of human nature? Like, we should be able to sit down and discuss the concepts and attempt to move the needle, even if that is the case. But of course, what Marxists say, and Engels has a famous quote where he says, human behavior is determined by material conditions. That if there are scarce resources that are hoarded by small groups of people, well, then you're going to see other groups of people do raids on those people and attempt to do all kinds of things. You're going to see people enslave themselves. You're going to see slavery happen, right? You're going to see these things happen. But if everybody has access to all the resources they could possibly want, then humans are going to act in a very different way, aren't they? Right? That, like, essentially what capitalists are attempting to convince you is that because you see a grizzly bear in a circus balancing on a ball, that it's just natural and normal that grizzly bears balance on balls. That's just how they work, you know? If you just threw a ball at a grizzly bear in the wild, he would just start balancing on top of it. And there's no other thing going on at all. This is essentially the argument that's being made. And I don't really take that too seriously. But it does seem like it's kind of the core argument that comes out of the capitalists at this point, because it's their last retreat. They've got nowhere else to go. Their system has been shown to be so fraudulent, so overwhelmingly over the top ridiculous, that they literally just have to throw up their hands and be like, it's just people for you. What are you going to do? Well, what are we going to do? We're going to take a look at the systems that exist in the society and discuss them and see if they need to be changed. Which, to pretend like the systems and institutions that exist in the society can't be changed, and that those changes can't have an impact on how people act in the society, that's babyish. It's just a babyish way of looking at the world. Like, of course they can. A basic glance at the history of feudalism shows that that's the case. Like, why write the Magna Carta in the first place? Like, why write any of this stuff? Why even have these discussions in the first place if it's all just like, oh, well, that's just capitalism, you can't do anything about it? Of course we can. Like, of course we can. And, like, the founders of the American Constitution were well aware that they could have very easily structured their Constitution so that everybody... so that the representational system actually did represent the people. But they very purposefully made it so that the Constitution that the power of the nation remained in the wealth of the nation. Like, it's literally in the document. James Madison explicitly understood that if we gave everybody the vote, they'll just vote our wealth away. And that's a problem for us, essentially monarchs and kings and lords, right? Like, these guys are barons and dukes and lords and shit. Like, they're not like carpenters and stuff. Like, maybe a couple of them, but like George Washington himself is essentially, I forget what his rank was, but he was a landholder in Europe, and he comes over, and they're essentially just the monarchs of that came over. And now they're there, and they're thinking to themselves, how do we make it so that these peasants, these serfs that we have, don't just, and slaves incidentally, don't just rise up against us through the system that we ourselves erect, right? It's an Aristotelian problem, that Aristotle actually was confronted with this. He called it the problem of democracy. And Aristotle's solution was, we should create a robust welfare state so that everybody has the bare necessities of their life taken care of. And if that occurs, then they won't really care that there are rich people. So we'll just make sure that that everybody has their their base necessities taken care of, and can live a life unfettered from those sorts of concerns. And that will make it so that the very wealthiest amongst us will be left alone. That was his idea. Well, James Madison's idea was, oh, we'll just make it so that the only way to actually get into the system at all, to be voted in at all, you have to be rich. And he just assumed that rich people will never vote their own wealth away. And he was right about that. That the only time the wealthy have ever voted their own wealth away was when there were people knocking at their door with hammers and sickles, calling for revolution. And it's the only way it actually works in this country, which makes our system shitty, which makes our system really bad. It doesn't work for that very reason, because the only way you can get anything done is by constantly enacting this class war, right? And so you're just constantly living in a society that's constantly at war with itself. And instead of structuring your society so everybody's facing in the same direction and going along the same trajectory. And we're going to face fairly major collapses over it. For example, John brings up, so the Swiss bailing out the SVB, Credit Suisse, is capitalist realism. We should just bend over and take it. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh yeah, this is just how it goes, right? Just things collapse and then we have to bail them out. And if we don't bail them out, then oh my God, there'll be breadlines, and it'll be worse if we don't bail them out, right? This is essentially what the Secretary of Treasury, I forget his name, he went on the Daily Show. This was essentially his argument when we did the 2008 bailout. He basically said we had to bail them out or else things would have been worse. And forget about the concept of nationalizing them. Forget about the concept of actually taking their resources away from them and saying, okay, you've shown that you're not capable of handling this, so we're just going to take that away from you. That doesn't exist. So these institutions have, and the people within it, have no reason whatsoever to reform themselves or to act differently. There's literally no consequences for failure. That if you are a bank and you fail, you're going to get $200 billion handed to you by the government. So who cares? Doesn't matter. Completely irrelevant. And if that's how it operates, and incidentally, that sounds to me like a merger of the private sector and the public sector, which is something that Mussolini defined as fascism. If that's what you're living under, then you'll never see reform. You'll never see a change. It'll just be a steady degradation of banks making shitty decisions and doing shitty things in the world, because who cares? Doesn't matter. They're going to make money either way. Conrad, my girlfriend just broke up with me and I don't know what I did. That's a tough one, Conrad, man. It's a tough one. Love's difficult, bud. I'm sorry to hear that, man. I really am. Because I know that, it's tough to find relationships. It's tough to find love. It's tough to especially these days where there's all this nonsense going on and everything's just total bullshit. And it seems to me, yeah, dude, Conrad, I think one of the things that you're going to have to accept, and this is a tough thing, especially for young guys to accept, sometimes it has nothing to do with anything you did. Sometimes it doesn't have anything to do with you, right? That it really is something to do with her. That I know that sounds like it's not you, it's me kind of thing, but it is just the truth. That people are in different places doing different things. And you're doing one thing, and she's looking at that going, I want to go do a different thing. And she knows that you're not going to do that thing. And it's just how it is, It's just how it is. Yeah, that's life, man. That's life. Sorry to hear it, bud. I posted one of your TikToks on Twitter and people loved it. I'm glad to hear it, bud. Share it around. Tell the world. I don't know. I need people in my back court doing exactly that kind of stuff. I know you don't like Twitter, but could be some good engagement. Canadian Communist Twitter has some incredible people. I'll link your Patreon next time if you want. Yeah, dude, go right ahead with that. Go right ahead with that. I don't know, dude. I just feel like Twitter to me feels very, I don't know, loose. I don't know how to, I don't know how to describe it. Like, I just don't, it's not engagement for me. I think that's the bottom line for me. Like, it doesn't feel like I'm engaging with anything. Like, I go on there, I say a thing, and then maybe people say something back to me, but like it's not like there's a good back and forth that can happen. I don't know. Twitter, and I mean, investing now into Twitter feels like investing in a building while it's falling over. You know, is Twitter even going to be around for much longer? Bread Bunny, I really respect you for asking donations. Don't get me wrong. I just cringe at the word likes. Yeah, by this point, it's just another trauma. Yeah. Sorry, I'm coming off obscene or out of touch. No, Bread Bunny, I don't think you are. Like, this whole like, share, subscribe phenomenon. It's like I've heard a story of like a little kid. Every time he said goodbye, instead of saying goodbye, he would say, "Be sure to like, share, subscribe." Because he's like watching so much YouTube, right? He's watching so much YouTube and all this, and everybody, of course, at the end of every video goes, "Be sure to like, share, subscribe." And so this kid has just decided that, oh, be sure to like, share, subscribe is just how you say goodbye, right? Like, friggin' ridiculous. All right, so let's get into the articles. Yeah, the SV bailout shows who's really in charge of capitalism. Absolutely. Absolutely, dude. Like, they don't give a fuck about us. Like those guys are getting a bailout while there's a student loan crisis. Those guys are getting a bailout while there's a Medicare crisis. Those guys are getting a bailout while there are train derailments all across America. Like, these guys are getting more money than we put into, like, climate change, right? Like, how much money did they actually spend on climate change, right? Like, not the same amount, and these guys are just getting more. Well, it tells you everything you need to know about what the priorities are in America, that it's a worship of money. That's what it is. They don't care about anything else. It's money, 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 money. And if you don't have money, then you've got nothing. And then once everything is poisoned and shitty, well, maybe then we'll realize that we can't eat fucking money. Climate change is a money laundering hoax. Yeah. We deserve everything that's coming for us, man. Like, that's the long and short of it. That, like, it's, and comments like that really remind me, like, we really deserve it. Like, I don't think you can see people who have earned this decline more. That we have done everything we could to squander everything we ever had, and we've really come to earn it. That we are going to hit a brick wall that is going to make the collapse of the Roman Empire look like a slow decline. Like, our decline is going to be so rapid and so quick and just so hysterical. And I don't mean hysterical in the funny way. I mean hysterical in the hysteria way. That we are going to go down like a roller coaster. And while it's happening, there's still going to be people walking around. Climate change is a money laundering hoax. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm sure that there are people who are perpetuating all kinds of hoaxes because that's how America works. It's a country of grifters. But the belief that climate change itself is a hoax, we deserve it. We deserve everything we're going to get. And there's going to be some real crazy shit that happens in America over the next 40 years. John says, the startup investor class cries that they need unlimited money for innovation, while they mostly produced redundant, worthless apps, while our infrastructure crumbles and our environment is destroyed. Yeah. It's not like there isn't stuff to do, you know? That's the thing. It's just everything has become financialization. Everything has... And, like, there's no money in fixing in infrastructure. There's no money in that, right? There's no money in laying down rail. Right? There's no money in that. Like, maybe you could make, like, a long-term investment argument, but, like, there's no direct, like... And these guys think literally in 4-month increments. Like, they do not believe in the concept of planning. That's one of my favorite things. When these guys start arguing against, like, 5-year plans and stuff like that. It's just like, we are lost. and literally lost. Like and we're happy that we're lost because we're pleased with our stupidity. Like it's like we're just trundling around in the forest, and there's a guy that's got a map, and we just keep insisting maps are communism. You can't maps lead to all kinds of catastrophes. Like we just love being this stupid. We're pleased with it. Trundling around. Yeah. Like, I mean, it's there's no rationale to any of this. Like, there's no rationale to what we're doing. Like, right now I'm looking at a map, and this is the map of AUKUS. I like showing this map because it gives you a different perspective of the field of combat, right? That we're used to kind of the more north-south kind of map, but this gives you kind of a better feeling of what it actually looks like and what the strategic points actually are. And the idea that we're going to get into a war with China and that's going to absolutely work out. And like to give you a sense of how stupid we are, right? Like here's a great article that really illustrates like exactly how dumb we are. Millennials are more likely than any other generation to support a cap on personal wealth. Well, so you're sitting there being like, oh, that's good. Millennials are more likely than other generations to support a cap on personal wealth. I've got to tell you, if you're actually going to stand in front of me and say that one person should have infinite wealth, I think you're stupid. Like, I really do. I think that is a stupid thing to believe. Like, you do not believe that there should be a king. The idea that there should be one person who has dictatorial power, right? Everybody understands that this is bad. But if a person has $700 trillion, that's fine. That's a completely normal thing, right? It's complete. And of course, the person that has $700 trillion is always going to act in the best interests of the society, is always going to do everything that the society wants, right? They're always going to do nice things, right? They're certainly not going to erect private militaries and basically act like a king, right? So the idea that there should just be one person who gets infinite amounts of wealth, and there's certainly no breaking points where they have so much wealth that they're able to take their wealth and then just chase other people away and then create monopoly power, right? That definitely doesn't happen. And so this belief that exists in the society that one person should be able to get infinite amounts of money is basically no different to me than saying, yeah, we should have a king. We should definitely have a king. That guy there, not only should we have a king, his son should just become the next king. Yeah, that's a smart way of organizing a complex digital society. That's essentially the argument, right? That's essentially what they're saying. And and when you look at the numbers, right? So it looks like, oh, well, millennials are better off. It's 1/3 of millennials. Right? 33% say a cap should exist. 33%. That means that 77% of the society believe that we should be ruled by oligarchs and kings, basically. Like it's a shockingly stupid thing to believe. What do we got? 17% amongst Gen X. So that means that 83% of Gen X think that we should be ruled by oligarchs and kings. That makes sense. That it should be completely possible for one person to get $100 trillion. That makes total sense. 7% amongst baby boomers, right? 93% of baby boomers think that it's logical that one person should get so much money that they can buy all the farmland. That makes sense. And a mere 2% amongst the silent generation. So 98% of the silent generation think that it's completely logical for people to shoot rockets into space while they impoverish their own workforce. Right? This is how we think we deserve everything we're getting. We absolutely deserve it. If we're going to hold these sorts of incredibly stupid belief systems, this is not much different to me than believing that, like, yeah, God made a king, and you gotta respect God. Like, it's not too much different in my view. And it all ties back in to that worship of stupidity. We really love being stupid. And nothing is stupider than these guys that are walking around saying, but he earned it. He earned it. He worked hard and he earned it. Like, you got to be a dumb idiot to think that that's the case. Like, really. Like, Galen Weston did not earn the empire he was born into. right? David Thompson did not earn the empire he was born into. Bill Gates did not earn the computer, right? He didn't invent the computer. It's a very stupid thing to think. And yet the vast majority of us think this way. So we absolutely deserve what's coming for us. We absolutely deserve what's coming for us. And when it occurs, when it happens, the very people who hold these extremely stupid belief systems are going to make a series of very stupid decisions back to back to back to back to back very rapidly and reconfigure the society to become stupider, structurally stupider, because it will mirror what they are. And the rest of the world, which is attempting to organize itself based on reason, peace, diplomacy, mutual trade, mutual exchange, mutual growth, right? That they're looking at us and they see what's happening. Like that's the thing that I think America is really in the dark about. That they really think, like, America actually does think it's still the top dog. It actually really does look out at the world and think, ah, yes, I own the globe. When America doesn't know anything about any of these countries, doesn't know anything about these people, it doesn't know anything. And it's losing the ability to exert its power. It's losing its ability to be unchallenged. And the entire rest of the world is starting to think, why are we even tolerating these guys? Why are we even paying attention to these guys? We should put these guys in the corner and isolate them. And that's exactly what's going to happen. And if countries like Australia, if countries like France, Spain, even Italy are smart, they're going to realize fairly soon, I hope, that tying their wagon to this overt Nazi star is going to be a disaster for them. That they are going to be pulled down with the ship. And meanwhile, China, India, Russia, Brazil, Latin America, they're all binding together and banding together because they know they need to create an alternative model and an alternative system to the quote-unquote international rules-based order that is obviously failing. Like, is obviously failing. And if America ever does get its act together and actually does decide that it wants to rejoin the international community in a rational way, then it's going to be so far behind that it's going to have to behold itself to a country like China in order to regain any positioning in the world at all. Like, China is already producing, every single year, China increases its production of solar panels and produces more solar panels every year than America has. Like, we are falling behind. We are falling behind, and it's going to get dramatic. And it's the reason why America keeps reaching for these wars. It's the reason why America's wars are getting more and more hysterical, and the reason why their wars are getting less and less logical and more stupid, because it's all they have left. They don't understand what diplomacy is. They don't care to do diplomacy. They literally believe that we have the manifest destiny and we're the greatest country in the world. And so when we talk, it's like God is talking to you, so you better listen up. And if that's the way you're going to act in the world, don't be too surprised if people go, what's with this fucking crazy idiot? We should talk to each other and forget them, right? And the entire rest of the world is now starting to get strong enough, and you can thank communists and socialists for this, they're starting to build up their productive capacity, and they're starting to build up their defensive capabilities. Like, you think about Venezuela. How is it that America cannot get rid of this Maduro guy? How is it that they cannot get rid of these Chavistas? And it's because the Chavistas are highly militant and they know what the threat is, right? They're not a bunch of guys living in huts. They're not a bunch of people who are living in like third world conditions. Like that you can't just roll in there with your guns and horses and do shock and awe tactics on these guys anymore. They know what you are, and they're armed to the teeth, and they're willing to fight you. And so we can't get a military force in there that's going to be successful, because we would have to commit so many resources in order to do it. And so the goal that they're doing now is just economic warfare. That's what they're doing right now. They're just flooding the economy with the currency in order to inflate the economy and attempt to collapse it that way. They're enacting sanctions, right? They're doing everything they can in order to ensure that the Venezuelan economy will collapse. And it's something of a miracle that the Chavistas have maintained power in all of this, right? And it looks to me like the pivot point is coming where the Maduro government's just going to start trading oil with China. And they're going to start trading the resources with China, and China's going to do good trade with them. And so Venezuela's going to have a big turn. But it shows you how weak the Americans have become. That, like, for 100 years, they were able to just rule over South America. Just walk in there with their forces and just rule over them. But they no longer really have in order to have, like, if you walk into a region and there's guys with just like spears and you've got guns, you essentially win. But now the difference is that like everybody's got guns, high quality, high caliber rifles, and you've got like rockets and like air support, right? Missiles and shit. But if you start using missiles and rockets against civilians, against people who are just defending their own soil, people look at that and go, that seems a bit much, don't you feel? Seems a bit like a full-scale war, don't you think? And it will only hasten the decline. Will only hasten the decline. It's just shocking to me. And like, for God's sakes, the stupidity continues. Canadian Foreign Minister calls for regime change in Russia. Canadian Foreign Minister Melanie Joly admitted that in the long-term goal of Western involvement in Ukraine is not merely to see Moscow defeated, but to enact regime change in Russia. Can you believe this? That, like, we are actually handing the entire planet all the reason it possibly could to look at Russia and go, oh yeah, these guys are right to do what they're doing. We're literally standing up and saying that our goal of what we're doing in Ukraine is to overthrow the leadership of Russia. Well, you think the Russians are going to look at that and be like, yeah, that's fine. That's a totally fine thing to say. That's a completely normal thing for a foreign leader to say. Yeah, you know what? It's normal when the foreign minister says that they're trying to overthrow our leadership, right? I'm sure it'll be for the best. We'll be better off when we're colonized, right? You think that's how the Russians are talking, right? You think that when the Chinese see this, you think when the Indians see this, you think when the Africans see this, when Middle Easterners see this, you think that when South America sees this, they think to themselves, yeah, you know, that's a normal thing for a country to say of another country. No. And it's yet another reason for the entire rest of the world to look at one another and say, we gotta isolate these guys. We gotta isolate these guys. Yeah, Bread Bunny, I don't know. And usually the comments are innocuous. Like, that's the thing that's the oddest. Like, I've done everything I can on this end. Usually the comments are fairly innocuous. So, I don't know. Try to find the one word that you think is the thing and put an @ sign in the middle of it or something. I don't know what to tell you. Like, it doesn't seem like there's any rhyme or reason to it. So, I don't know what it's even looking for, right? Like, that's the thing. I don't even know what it's looking for. So, and I just assume that one day this whole thing will be deleted anyway. So they're not going to let these apps persist for much longer, I think. We need to educate Gen X. I think that Gen X is more or less just like listen to Gen X music, man. Listen to Gen X music. I think that Gen X is basically just like, yep, I'm just here to grind my time and find my way out the door. Like that's more or less the position of Gen X. That if you stand up as a Gen Z or as a millennial and say we need to change the system, the Gen X position is that's not going to happen. Like they've just accepted it, and you can tell. Like you talk to a Gen X for any amount of time, and they're not the one that's going to be complaining. They're going to listen to you complain, and they're going to go, yeah, yep, that's a heck of a thing. Yeah, you're right. Yep, it's not right. It's not right. And then if you start talking about changing the system, they're going to be like, no, what are you going to do? Because what are you going to do? What are you going to do? These boomers, man. These boomers. Like, capitalism is a good thing, says the Dark Lord. Yeah, that's an appropriate name, I should say, for somebody to defend the system of capital. Please, the Dark Lord. Please, Dark Lord. Certainly not the name of a death cultist, right? Please inform us about why capitalism is a good thing. I tend to think that the Gen X song is actually songs like Black Hole Sun, right? Like Smells Like Teen Spirit. Like that music seems to be like the music that Gen X actually ends up producing. Right? That like the millennials listened to it, but Gen X made it. And it's all about the hopelessness. It's all about the hopelessness of it. The Dark Lord 211 says, I made this account when I was 12. Of course, this name sucks. Yeah. I highly suggest making another account, my friend. Like, I remember one time I had a fellow, I was using the email that I made when I was like a kid for like professional stuff. And one guy just looked at me and he was very polite about it. He was very kind and he just said, hey man, get it, make a new email. Right? And I think it's time for you to make a new name. Like if you want to not be seen as a 12-year-old, when you say things like capitalism is a good thing, and if you want people like me to take you seriously, when you say things like capitalism is a good thing, which I objectively disagree with, very strongly, very, very strongly disagree with. If you want me to even start to take you seriously with that, yeah, you should make a new account, my man. You should make a new account. Bread Bunny, well, I was trying to say, I think some of the fascists that come in here are bots literally not programmed to love. And the reality of my future here and even my present here makes me want to leave. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, dude. I don't know. Like, the bots are not that good. Like, that's the thing. Like, they're pretty good at spam. Like, they're pretty good at presenting like what bots can do is they can pretend like there's a unified front. So you can get like 4 bots or 5 bots in at the same time saying kind of the same stuff, but they can't really, like they're not really capable of holding a meaningful conversation. They can't really make an argument. You know what I mean? Like bots are pretty stupid at the end of the day. I mean, communism, i.e. what you've heard from the CIA, was horrible. Capitalism is why you can afford medical education and basic life essentials. No, that would be workers that do that. Yeah, that what the Soviet Union was terrible. Yeah, I'm sure that the industrialization of the nation and sending the first rockets into space really was terrible. That's why Russians are more inclined to actually want to go back to the Soviet Union, right? That's my favorite thing when people say the Soviet Union was terrible. It's like, well, we asked them, right? We've asked them that we have 60% of Russians are saying that they would like to go back to the Soviet Union, right? Yeah, oh, yeah. Basically, you're just saying that slavery was good because slaves that work hard under capitalism get petted instead of slapped. That's all. Like, that's the position, dude. Like, capitalism takes and exploits from the workers and keeps for itself, the capitalist class, so that it can continue a process of exploitation. That's what capitalism's all about. That it's erected by slavery. It's erected by a war machine and a death machine, right? The Dark Lord says, I respect that 60%. It was the leaders from the Soviet Union was bad. I mean, why? Like, Stalin was the guy that oversaw the industrialization of the nation and defeated the Nazis. Like, the Stalin was the one that got rid of the kulaks, right? Literally just landlords and shitty Confederate slaver types in his society. Like, I tend to take the Chinese perspective of Stalin and say that he was about 70-30, right? Yeah, what do you think capitalism is? That's a good question to ask, Red Bunny, because this is something that I find is that, like, Stalin was the one who kept half of Europe. Yeah, I wish he had kept the whole thing, honestly. That's more or less why I think the Americans got involved in the war, by the way. Is because they were fine with staying on the back foot, and they were fine staying out of it as long as Hitler was going to win. Because they rather liked Hitler. They put him on Time's Most Important Person magazine, right? And did it clearly work, right? You should probably ask the people of Africa about that. You should probably ask the people of South America about that, right? You should probably ask the people of Indonesia that. You should probably ask the Vietnamese, right? You should probably ask the Libyans. You should probably ask the Syrians, right? You should probably ask the Palestinians how capitalism's working out, right? Yeah, show a walk around on the Market Street in Philadelphia, yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, exactly, Bread Bunny. Bread Bunny's asking the real question. What is capitalism? What defines it? What makes capitalism capitalism? Like, why isn't capitalism feudalism? Why isn't capitalism like slavery? Like, what makes capitalism capitalism? What's the definition of capitalism? Yeah, look at Africa. They are not the richest continent. Yeah. Yeah, dude. Why do you think that is? Like, why do you think that is? Do you think it has something to do with the slave trade that happened? Do you think that the Americans, the British at the time, went to the African continent, committed genocide against the people, enslaved black people on the continent, destroyed a lot of their infrastructure, destroyed a lot of their society, pilfered a lot of the riches from that, and brought it back to their own country? Do you think that might be part of the reason why it happened? Right? Do you think maybe the reason why we have some of the wealth that we have is because we stole a lot of it? Do you think maybe that has something to do with it? That we walked into a place where there were lots of people and exterminated them? Like, entire empires were exterminated by capitalists. That they exterminated the Mayans, they exterminated the Inca, they exterminated the Aztecs, they exterminated the Cree, the Iroquois, the Muskoka. They exterminated just entire civilizations of people, right? Capitalism isn't slavery. You are not forced to work. Yeah, you could just starve, right? That's what it is. Like, it's you can just not work, but you'll starve, right? So, and who do you work for, right? Like, this position that you're not forced to work. Like, what are you talking about? If you don't work, you starve. If you don't find a way to work or die isn't slavery. Yeah, exactly. That's your own problem. I love it. Just the tacit admission that there is no society, right? There's no that it's completely fine that people own the means of production and withhold the benefits of the means of production from people. Yeah, that's your own problem. So tell me, why should anybody abide to the law? Why should anybody follow the law? Why should anyone pay attention to any of the rules? Right? I know what your answer is going to be, right? Because I assume I'm just talking to a little Nazi, right? I assume I'm just talking to like a little fascist over there who thinks that it's completely fine that people starve to death in homelessness, who think that it's completely fine. Yeah, we pay for police to protect private property, right? Yeah, so we could pay a bunch of police to protect private property, but if we give a loaf of bread to somebody, that's their problem, right? Just to say, who cares? Who gives a shit about your country? Your country is starving people. Who gives a fuck about your stupid little country? Your idea of what a country is? Who cares at all? right? You literally just told me that we should throw people onto the street and that's their problem. Why should I fucking give a shit about your stupid idea of what a country is? That's a very stupid thing you're saying. Straight up. That's a very stupid thing you're saying. That people should want to work for the country that abandons them. What are you talking about? Like, I would never in a million years want to hang out with somebody who thought that it was completely fine to fuck me over entirely and tell me that it's for my own good and that I should have to absolutely put everything. That's exactly what you're saying. That's exactly what you're saying, bud. You're just too stupid to realize it. Like, if you're going to walk in here and actually tell me that capitalism is good because it robs everybody, steals everything from everybody, no, you just don't know what you're talking about, bud. That the shit that's coming out of your mouth is so fucking stupid and you don't even realize how stupid it is. Like, you have to tell me now. Tell me right now, what is capitalism? You seem very confident that capitalism is this great system. You seem very confident that capitalism has helped the entire rest of the world. What is it? Yeah, you can deny your connection to others, but it still exists. Their suffering increases your own. Yeah, that's how capitalism works. That you exploit other people. That's the core nugget of what capitalism is, right? I'll give you the definition. I'll tell you what it is. Certainly how communists talk about it. That capitalism is defined by who owns the means of production versus who does not own the means of production. That there are classes that exist in the society. Yeah, I've seen people do exactly that, dude. So what you end up with is you end up with a perpetual class war, where you have one side of the society that owns all the wealth and power and control and maintains it by military force. And then you have another group, the vast majority of people who own nothing and have to sell themselves to these capitalists. These capitalists are completely motivated by profit. They worship money. Yeah, and I mean, Gritting's pointing it out, dude. Like, if you're Googling the definition of the thing that you're defending while being challenged, like, I think it might be time for you to no longer defend your position and start listening to people who are attacking it. Because it seems to me that what is happening in our society is that we are so heavily propagandized as a people that we are going along with things that are overtly against your own interests. That to stand up and say that capitalism is great while it's actively seeking to enslave and destroy you is absurd. It's very difficult for me to understand why people are so gung-ho about allowing owners who they've never met, who literally will poison and destroy them for money, which we've seen them do over and over and over and over and over again. And yet we continuously subserviate ourselves to these people and believe that it's good, if not righteous, that these people should rule over us, withhold resources from us, in order and threaten us with homelessness and threaten us with starvation in order to get us to work for them, for cheap. Because that's what that's all about. That the owners of the society want to make a shithole society for us, so we'll be so desperate that we'll accept any wage they'll give us. Because at the end of the day, they don't give a fuck about the society. They don't care about building a civil society. They don't care about building a strong society. They care about numbers on a screen. That's what they care about. That's all they care about. Good to see you, Transylvanian. Good opportunity to say like, share, subscribe to the channel, guys. Be sure to donate to the Patreon. If you want somebody out in the world acting political in this way and actually confronting people in the halls of power and actually doing something, instead of wasting his time grinding away at these worthless capitalist jobs that are pointless, make sure you donate to the Patreon. Even $1 would help. Thank you. Bread Bunny's still about the bots. I don't think they are all bots. Some show an essence of dulled humanity, but some, like this guy, are so incapably dysfunctional that they're either a bot or a child or from a mental ward. No, you know what, man? I do think, like, if I wanted to get a little bit more forgiving than that, I just think that people can get really caught in systems of propaganda. Like, it really is the case that people can just get caught in systems of propaganda. And those systems of propaganda can be dismantled fairly easily. But the worst are the people who are just so heavily propagandized that they can't get through it. That they genuinely just believe that what they're experiencing is normal. Doesn't everybody get treated this way? Like, it's like there's this story. This is a little bit blue, but I'll tell this story anyway. There's a story I saw on the internet of this like little kid. There was this guy who, when he was a little kid, he went to school, and his mom every day would put a butt plug in his bum before he went to school. And so he would go to school, and then something happened with the butt plug. It fell into the toilet one day while he was pooping. And then he just went to the teachers and told them about it. Because he was just like, yeah, my butt plug fell into the thing. And they were like, what? And then he talks about how there was this big meeting and all this kind of stuff. Then he finds out his mom had schizophrenia. And he thinks about how, like, yeah, I just thought that was normal. I just thought everybody had a butt plug. I just thought that's what it was. I just thought that's how you did it. Right? That's what the life was. Right? And I feel like, I know while that story is a bit grotesque, it sheds light on where I think a lot of these people are. That they think that what they're experiencing is normal. They think that everything is hunky-dory because they're doing well. They don't see the threads of their success tying to the structural failure of others. They don't see the threads of history, the history of slavery in America, for example, the history of genocide in America. They don't see any of that. That all that matters is, well, I've got a job doing well, you just need to get a job too. And that's it. So they're still wearing the butt plug. I know what capitalism was, but it's one of those words where if I put it in my own words, I'll say something wrong. Well, let me help you out, bud. Capitalism is an economic structure that says small groups of people should own the means of production and that everyone else should work for them. That's what it is. That you don't own anything. You work for people who own property and the means of production and land and all that stuff that they maintain through police force and a series of legal agreements. And the result of this, play one game of Monopoly and you'll see what the result of it is. The result of it is that more and more assets and wealth and property get held under smaller and smaller hands until eventually you just end up with people who have more power, wealth, and prestige than ancient pharaohs. Right? You have people who have more wealth right now than kings and queens of the feudal period. Like the idea that this is how we should structure our society as it collapses backwards into feudalism, like the entire rest of the world is looking at us with horror at the absolute abomination we are producing for ourselves. That's the thing that's the most shocking, is that we're doing it to ourselves. Yeah, John says if you build enough gated communities and take enough Xanax, alcohol, or Ambien, it's like the homeless people aren't even there. Yeah, I know, Bread Bunny. I'm feeling like, hey, Major, how you doing, bud? Do I think democracy is good? Of course. I think that the essence, one of the essence of communism is that the people are the ones that are discussing things, and it goes up the chain, right? The Soviet Union was a democracy that structured itself through a series of guilds. And then those discussions were sent up the chain until finally you ended up with an executive council that was informed by these lower councils. And that's usually how these communist structures are structured. That's very much how the Chinese democracy is structured. That you have a National People's Congress where people are elected to, and that council itself elects a smaller council, and that smaller, and you want smaller organizations like this because that's how you maintain agility, right? You don't need big cumbersome institutions in most cases. And what matters is that the small organization is responsive to the larger one that is itself an elected body. And the myth that persists throughout the capitalist world is that these were dictatorships. It just can't be taken seriously. Like, they're not Westminster parliamentary democracies. They're not like Congress, Senate, presidency, Supreme Court. Like, that's not how they're structured. But to pretend like they're not democracies is weird. It's a weird thing to believe. So of course I think democracy is good because I'm a communist. I think democracy is good. The people who are actually terrified of real democracy, the people who are terrified of democracy are capitalists. That's why they don't really allow democracy to persist, right? That what we've ended up with and what we've ended up with structurally from the very beginning is a quote-unquote democracy where only the rich can participate. That it's written in the document. James Madison wrote in the document that the point of it is to keep power within the wealth of the nation. So it doesn't matter what you think. And incidentally, we've done the studies. There's a Princeton study that I can show you right now if you like. There's a Princeton study that says that our quote-unquote democracy does not respond to us. It doesn't give a shit about what we say or what we think. It doesn't care at all, right? So the only way to influence anything in the country is to be rich. So that's no democracy. So of course I believe in democracy. I'm a communist. The people who don't believe in democracy are capitalists. And proof's in the pudding. Transylvanian, missed your last stream. Just finished watching the recording on the last one. Got the notification for this one. Wow, that's dedication. Thanks, Transylvanian. I appreciate that, bud. It blows me away. I was thinking about this just the other day, dude. It blows me away that I've got like regular listeners. Don't get me wrong, guys. I'm so happy that you're out there. And I love each and every one of you. I think that you're beautiful. But it's amazing to me that it's coming together. That's the thing. Like, when I started doing this, I really believed that I was just going to do it because I needed to do it for myself. But now to know that there are people who actually listen in, to listen to what I say, to hear what I've had people say that I just like the way your voice sounds. I'm like, okay, I'll take it. That to me, I feel very privileged. And should I ever get to a point where I'm able to do this full time as a job, as the thing that I'm actually focusing all my time on, I will feel like a very lucky person. That will make me the most fortunate man alive, I think. And hopefully, and I like to challenge the universe with this one, hopefully the universe will just make me fabulously wealthy, because if I reach a point where I'm making like even more than $100,000, if I made more than $100,000 in a year, I literally think I would just walk around handing money out. Like, it's just such to me, $100,000 is just I can't perceive that amount of money in my life. I just don't even understand what that would be like to have that kind of money. And I would just walk around handing it out. It's like, what am I going to do with it? Once I have a nice pair of shoes, we're off to the races. Let's be nicer to the Dark Lord, okay? Let's be nicer. Okay, everybody. I need you to be nicer to the Dark Lord. Oh, the Dark Lords. Yeah, exactly. All right, I'm going to leave. I'm bored. Good night, everybody. Yeah. That's right. You're not bored. You're embarrassed. No, I just think, like, people can only handle so much. You know what? And that I think is the truth. I'm in a very forgiving mood right now. I'm in a very kind of like, people can only handle so much. You can't Like, if you're being confronted with the reality of the absurdity of your own system, you can only take so much of it before you gotta go and process. And I think there's something to that. So I don't mind. Speaking of the Dark Lord, for those of you on TikTok, I've got a great picture up of like a bunch of demons at computers in cubicles, basically operating like a capitalist environment, but, you know, more accurate in terms of their presentation of what they actually are. Santora, good to see you, bud. Oh, man. I had some, like, suicide wings today. They were suicide wings, dude. I was so happy I ate them. But now they're reminding me that I ate them. Grinning says, capitalism fails wherever it's tried. Every piece of news, every complaint about this country, it all traces back to capitalism. It would fail if the government didn't enforce it so violently. Yeah, well, that's because the capitalists buy the government. Bread Bunny, yes, I believe most fascists are narcissists in denial of their trauma and live in a reduced perspective that is far from reality, ignorant to it willfully or otherwise. It can look like bots, yeah. Content says real democracy would absolutely vote wealth away. No right-minded person would willingly tolerate being ripped off. Well, that's not true. That's not true, Cotton. I got an article here that says even millennials are more likely than other generations to support a cap on personal wealth, and it's only 33% of millennials. So vast majorities of people think that we should absolutely be ripped off. That it's completely, totally normal that somebody has like $100 trillion. That's normal. That's not going to be distortionary at all. That's completely normal, right? We shouldn't cap that. Absolutely not. We shouldn't cap that. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here being like, yeah, $1 million is enough. Once you get $1 million, we can cap that, right? Like, fuck you. A person should not have so much wealth that they can literally buy countries. Like, what are you even fucking talking about? You know what you end up with when you end up with that? You end up with Jeffrey Epstein. That's what you end up with. Like, who do you think funds this guy? How do you think he got an island? Where do you think that all came from? It came from the fact that we gave, like, $100 billion to a psychopath. And, oh, big surprise, the guy that ended up with $100 billion was the guy who was willing to fuck everybody over and be a psycho about it. Like, big fucking surprise. Santora says, you are a core part of my work routine at this point. I enjoy it a lot with dealing with hell. Solidarity matters, doesn't it? Like, solidarity forever, you know? I'm just so grateful because I know that there are other options, you know? Even that, like, I know that there are other people who talk about these issues, but it seems like a lot of you have chosen me, and I'm very grateful about it. I'm very grateful for it. Content, John, people tolerate getting ripped off because you will be murdered by the state if you really resist. Yeah. I don't know, dude. I think that people still somehow think that, oh no, maybe I'll just get rich, you know, and everything will be better. Even the libest of the libs know that. Do they? Do the liberals really know that? I think the liberals are in deep denial about lots of things. John says, I'm on like a 5-day listening streak. I used to listen to Vosh and Hassanabi. I don't mind Hassanabi, I gotta tell you. Like, I sometimes listen to clips from Hassan because I like his takes. He is well informed. I think he is fighting the good fight. My criticism of him is only that he's not actually mobilizing people. That I'm convinced all he's doing is erecting a business. That he's not actually interested in building a movement. Like, he's not really participating in any protest movements. He's not actually building force in order to do anything really meaningfully politically. That what he's doing is just erecting a business and benefiting from... And I shouldn't say he's not providing a service, because I think he does do a lot of education. And his takes are usually pretty solid, I think. And of course, he's got holes. He's got gaps, just like all of us. And there are things, like, I think his take on Julian Assange is just way out there. Like, I think he's way off. But I think it's just because he doesn't know anything about it. That's all. I just don't think he knows anything about the subject. And so, of course, his take is bad because he doesn't know what's going on. And he's never been motivated to know what's going on, right? But Uh, but I mean, his story is very much like his uncle is the fellow from the Young Turks, and so he just kind of hitches that wagon to that star and just starts streaming like mad in his in his mom's house basically, and he's a charismatic, knowledgeable man. So I feel like he's done fairly well in that regard. I just wish that he would be more political and actually be attempting to move forward in praxis. Vosh is straight up an FBI snitch. Like he confessed to it on his stream once. Like to me, that's the end of him. If you ask me, like you are listening to like a pro-imperialist, capitalist simp, FBI snitch. That like I respect. I think that a guy like Vosh manages to gain power and gain momentum just because he gets in on the ground floor. That he literally starts doing it when YouTube first starts, and of course he's got FBI support, so he can just do it. He doesn't actually need to work another job because the FBI is paying him to do it, and and his takes are pro-imperialist, pro-capitalist, but he can convince Americans that he's a quote unquote leftist because he says things like, yeah, we should have Medicare for all. People should have student loans should be forgiven, right? So he's got positions that make him sound like a leftist, but it's very common. Like I have this criticism of Jon Stewart, that Jon Stewart is allowed to say anything he wants in terms of the domestic critique of what's happening domestically with America. But when he talks about foreign politics, he's essentially a pro-imperialist. Like, he doesn't really have an imperialist critique. And like, for example, he talks about Venezuela the way the CIA talks about Venezuela. Like, that's... He literally has people on his show calling Maduro a dictator as Maduro wins elections. Like, so it's pretty common. And I don't really hold that against anybody because I feel like Vosh is operating in a vacuum. You know, that he doesn't actually have competition. He doesn't actually have anybody who is challenging him meaningfully while he's building force. And it's only later on where you, like, the one thing I lament about my life is that when YouTube started, I thought to myself, I should do that. I should just start doing that. But I just didn't believe in it. I talked myself out of doing it. I pursued other things, and I always had in the back of my mind that I should be doing this, I should be doing this, I should be doing this. And then I just finally got to a point in my life where I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to do it. I don't give a fuck what anybody thinks. And I'm starting to do it, and it's starting to work. And so I just wish I had started sooner. And to me, like, I've always wanted to be somebody who has been involved in the conversation, in the national conversation. And I feel like what always drove me crazy was when issues would occur. I think especially about like the New Atheist period. I always wanted to be able to talk about that while it was happening, because I always felt like my perspective was unique and different than everything else that was being said. And I always thought that it would be useful to have a different perspective in that discourse. And so I'm hoping that maybe in 10 years, I'll get to a point where people will be like, okay, this is what the corporatists say. This is what the capitalists say. Here's what these guys say, and here's what these guys say. Let's listen to what John has to say. And that my take will be my own, and it will be unique and different from everybody else. Because I feel like I'm a unique and different kind of a fellow. Anyway, that was a big long diatribe based on kind of an offhanded comment. But welcome to the stream, John. Welcome to the stream. Transylvanian says, funnily enough, that's exactly what some of the founding fathers said, except they viewed it as something to be prevented at all cost, which is why they built in safeguards against it. Content, I'm going to make that quote into a propaganda flyer. Yeah. Stick around, man. Content says some real fire shit all the time. Bread Bunny, John, what's my criticism of me? You're lovely. I'm never gonna criticize you, Bread Bunny. That's my criticism. Vast majorities of people are here aren't right-minded, and it's the system's fault. I mean, yeah, like we have a collapsing education system that refused to teach people basic stuff. Command Genius, pleasure to see you. Adam, pleasure to see you. Reminder, guys, to like the stream, like, share, subscribe. Please consider donating to the Patreon. It's even $1 would help. Transylvanian, I appreciate that you took the time to explain why the person in chat was wrong. It would have been easy to dismiss him as a troll, but if one person in the audience learns something, it's worth it. That's my opinion. I look at it as an opportunity, right? Because there's an opportunity to change one mind, and there's an opportunity to lay out the case, and to illustrate something that I think I've been thinking a lot about today, which I talk a lot about the worship of money, the worship of the individual, and a worship of stupidity. And the libertarian right, which has become larger and larger in America, isn't capable, or isn't willing, at least, isn't willing to grapple with what's actually being said by communists. That's why the knee-jerk reaction of, oh, communism results in hundreds of millions of deaths, they've got to go down that path. They have to. Because to actually grapple with what's being said, to argue against it, makes you realize pretty quick that you're on the side of the slavers. And so they choose stupidity. Because they don't have another alternative. And I see a lot of that. And that people can't actually grasp what's being said to them, because if they actually did grasp what was being said to them, then they would realize, oh shit, I'm like defending slavery. Like, that's what I'm defending. That, like, the wage slave, like the Lincoln Republicans defined the system that we live under now as wage slavery. That the Confederates argued that the system that we live under right now was a wage slave system that was actually worse than chattel slavery. That's what the Confederates actually argued. And they fought a war over that system, and Lincoln had run on a platform of abolishing this system, the wage slave system, but was unable to do so because he lacked the political ability, the political will after fighting a war in order to get rid of chattel slavery. And so now this system of wage slavery persists. And if you're not willing to engage with what's being said to you in a serious or intellectual way and actually defend your position, well, then you have to become stupid. There's no alternative. Transylvanian says, as revolutionaries, we don't have the right to say we are tired of explaining. We must never stop explaining. We know that when the people understand, they cannot help but follow us. Thomas Sankara. Yeah. The more I learn about Thomas Sankara, the more I see that was a real powerful man. What a very, very powerful man. That we all had the privilege of his existence on this earth. Yeah, damn it, Sankara. Damn your virtue. I do think there comes a point where I need to get like a recording and just like play the recording. Adam says, not sure if someone pointed this out, but Paul Joseph Watson, author about the article about Melanie Joly, would be worse than Joly or Trudeau for society if they were in charge. Pro-Trump Alex Jones. Yeah, I'm sure. But I don't mind using those sorts of sources when they're pointing out trouble with our own leadership. Right? I don't mind that. Like, because this is true. This happened. And where else am I going to hear about it? Our own media is not going to report it, right? Like, the National Post isn't going to report it. The Globe and Mail is not going to report it, right? The Toronto Star is not going to report it. So who's going to report it? Probably a guy like this, right? Who's going to stand up and be like, the Canadian foreign minister said that we should do regime change in Russia. It's like, oh, okay. So thank you, weird kooky guy, for saying something true that is true. Fabala Ellis. Got sick of watching on TikTok. Good to see you. Good to see you. Uberlurd. Uberlerd. Hello, I love the way that you make sentences. Well, that's very kind of you to say. Thanks for making me feel less gaslit in this society. That's absolutely right, dude. That's absolutely right. That's a big reason why I started doing this stream, because there have been moments in my life where I tried before YouTube. I like tried to get involved in some kind of media thing, or get quote unquote get the message out, but I always felt very isolated, and so I gave up on it. And I got to a point in my life where I was just like, I'm just gonna try to grind set and try to build my own wealth and try to get into that kind of stuff. And it made things way harder. It made things way worse. That it's better to have solidarity, because without solidarity, you can be gaslit. You can believe that you're the crazy one. You can believe that if you're the one who believes the things that we're talking about in this, but you're surrounded by people who are just telling you, just grind set, stop. So what are you talking about, this communist bullshit? Like, don't you know communism always fails, all this kind of stuff, and you're surrounded by that wherever you go, then you can end up feeling like the crazy one. And big reason why I do this is so that people can see that you're not the crazy one. You're not alone. That there are good reasons for thinking the way that you think. And there are good reasons for wanting to change the system that you live in. And that it doesn't make you crazy. That the people who are gaslighting us, the reason why they're gaslighting us is because they're threatened of us. That they know that if we manage to gain force, they will lose. Because not only do we have the emotional truth of our convictions behind us, but we're also right. And all they have at the end of the day are money, are numbers on a screen. And soon that won't mean a goddamn thing at all. Oh yeah, watching TikTok comments. Let's take a look. Yeah, you got me on the CBC shirt, dude. That's actually legit. I shouldn't wear this shirt on the stream, I know, but it's a comfortable shirt. It's good. Like, I've been working out. Like, it's clean. It's got that going for it. So you're right. You got me on the CBC shirt, dude. Not that I actually hate the CBC, by the way. Like, I don't actually hate the CBC. The CBC is Canadian propaganda. So once you understand that it's Canadian propaganda, but it's bad for me as a communist to be wearing it and sending out Canadian propaganda. But it's very Canadian at the same time. So, but yeah, you got me, bud. You got me. Communism, complete government control, though, no thanks. Yeah, because your own system isn't total government control. That's kind of an embarrassing position, honestly. Like, imagine believing that America is like, yeah, land of the free. Everybody's free in America. You can do what you want. Certainly the government isn't owned and controlled by corporate power, and those corporate powers don't like, literally you live in a country that is right now bailing out failed banks once again, and while the student loan crisis rages. Can't forgive student debt. That'll collapse the economy and create inflation. But, oh, you want $300 billion because you bet on crypto? Like, wonk, wonk, wonk. I don't have the bingo open, Command Genius. Sorry, dude. I forgot. I should get that bingo back, though. The bingo was fun. I'm America. Everyone's free to be homeless, die from preventable diseases. Yep, you're free to die. That's exactly it. Free to starve. Hey, I know it's not for you or what you would do, but would you think it's an ill-advised idea on my behalf to be thinking about if and when I should attempt to flee to China or Cuba? I can't comment, Bread Bunny. You know your life better than I do. You know your life better than I do. You know your circumstances better than I do. And I'm not gonna, if you feel that's something you need to do for yourself, then I'm not gonna think you're crazy for doing it. Yeah, wait, where's the ballot initiative to cap wealth and drop the rates to rent? Where's my freedom to vote on that issue? Where's my freedom to see that happen? Yeah, exactly. Meanwhile, got a fun article here from the Weather Channel, right? You know, crazy, kooky, far left, the Weather Channel. Breathing is going to get harder. This is why. Breathing is going to be more difficult in the future, and the source of the problem might surprise you. We're already aware of how human sources of pollution can cause or worsen all sorts of health problems, including asthma, autoimmune diseases, and lung cancer. And the combined effects of ambient or outdoor air pollution and household air pollution are associated with more than 7 million premature deaths annually, according to the World Health Organization. Now researchers warn that rising global temperatures could lead to an increase in pollution from natural sources. We are not looking at human emissions of air pollution because we can change what we emit. We can switch to electric cars, but that may not change air pollution from plants or dust, said James Gomez, lead author of a new study published in the journal Communications, Earth and Environment. If global temperatures rise by 7.2 degrees Fahrenheit, 4 degrees Celsius, harmful plant emissions and dust will increase by as much as 14%, according to the UC Riverside research. The role of plants in pollution. Gomez, a UC Riverside doctoral student, explains that all plants produce chemicals called biogenic volatile organic compounds, or BOVOX. The smell of a just mowed lawn, or the sweetness of a ripe strawberry. Those are BVOCs. Plants are constantly emitting them, he said in a news release about the study. Benign on their own, BVOCs produce organic aerosols when they react with oxygen. Once inhaled, the aerosols can lead to infant mortality and childhood asthma, as well as heart disease and lung cancer in adults, according to the release. Plants increase BVOC production for two reasons: increases in atmospheric carbon dioxide and increases in temperature. Granted, plants are good for the environment because they reduce carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It's the large-scale increase in carbon dioxide that contributes to the biosphere increasing BVOCs and then organic aerosols, Gomez says. Increased dust will also be a problem. Dust from the Sahara Desert will most likely be the second largest contributor to future air pollution. In our models, an increase in winds is projected to loft more dust into the atmosphere, said Robert Allen, Associate Professor of Earth and Planetary Sciences at UCR and co-author of the study. With a warming climate, higher dust levels are expected in Africa, the eastern U.S., and the Caribbean. Intense monsoons will increase dust levels over northern Africa. Dust and organic aerosols are known as PM 2.5 pollutants because they have a diameter of 2.5 micrometers or less. In the study, the increase in naturally sourced PM 2.5 pollution increased in direct proportion to carbon dioxide levels. The more we increase CO2, the more PM 2.5 we see being put into the atmosphere, and the inverse is also true. The more we reduce, the better the air quality gets, Gomez says. The hope, he said, is that the research will spur more actions to reduce carbon dioxide emissions. So literally the Earth is just like, oh, you want to put carbon in the air, eh? I'm just going to choke you with plants. It's like the Earth itself is rising up against us and just like putting its hands around our throat and just being like, oh, you want to poison me, do you? Oh, we'll see about that. We'll see about that. And we're just like, yeah, cars gotta go fast. I need to have the freedom to drive whenever I want. I gotta be able to walk 10 steps out my door and get into a truck that's bigger than a World War II tank so I can drive down to the 7-Eleven and get myself a Krispy Kreme. And if I can't get myself a Krispy Kreme by burning the bones of my ancestors, then this is a failed society and it's communism. This is who we are. This is who we are. This is literally what we've become. Yeah, I'm sorry. The Weather Channel is full doom now? Yeah. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you, Anemone. Thank you. Easier path to settle in Taiwan and be there when China eventually annexes it completely. I don't know about that, dude. I don't know about that. Like, you want to believe that it's just going to be China going in there and being like, okay, we own it now, it's over, right? But I think it might not be like that. I think it's going to be a little bit more ridiculous. Yep, capitalism's answers to homelessness is tense. The innovation never stops. Yep, in doom eternal, of course. Dude, I don't know why I did this to myself, but I started playing Mortal Kombat 11 again. I don't know why. Why did I download it? Why am I playing it? Why? It's such a fucking brutal game. But I'm playing it, and I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, Mortal Kombat. It's like going back to my youth. Bottom line, the crisis is systemic and things are just getting started. More banks are likely to follow. I think that's right. Well, I mean, it's by definition, it must be the case, right? That the system of capital, big fish eat small fish. And there isn't really anything to invest in anymore because we've decided that money is more important than infrastructure. So there's nowhere to invest money, and so people are making stupider and stupider gambles, right? Like at the heart of the SVB collapse is the fact that they invested heavily in crypto, and crypto is a failure because it doesn't do anything, it doesn't produce anything, it's not important, it's not a meaningful contribution. It's just fictitious capital that gets made up to con people into believing this is going to do something, and then when it doesn't do anything, people realize, oh fuck this, I'm gonna pull my money. And they just try to, like, the whole pitch of crypto is just try to find a bigger dupe than you. That's all. It doesn't actually make anything or do anything. Major. In response to the article I just read, well, I guess we must burn all plants then. The plants are our enemies. What we need, hold on, I want to do this with like the what it would actually sound like. My fellow Americans, what we have in front of us is a true crisis, that we have been confronted by the evils of nature itself, and what we must do is dedicate ourselves to the extermination of all plant life for the betterment of America. We won't let these evil terrorists, fauna and flora, defeat us any longer, and we have to dedicate all of our resources in order to confront the overwhelming threat of plants. God bless America. As electrolytes, it's what plants crave. Adam, Jolly's regime change story is mainstream news. David McIntyre and the Canadian File shared a National Post story on it. I bet something along there thinking we'll write more on it. Oh, is that true? I haven't found anything else on it. That's good to hear. I'm glad to hear that that's breaking through a little bit more, dude. Because, like, this is a crazy story. Like, it's insane. The fact that the Canadian foreign prime minister is calling for regime change in Russia is insane. If you're living in China, certainly Russia, if you're living in India, if you're living in South America, you're looking at this going, oh, they've lost their minds. Like, they've lost their minds. Absolutely. Canada has lost its fucking mind. That we are and more importantly, it completely justifies what Russia has done. Like, this kind of thing, like, oh, it turns out that they are trying to do regime change in Russia. How do we know? They admitted it. They're just admitting it. Openly. Oh, so this has nothing to do about the freedom of Ukraine or the freedom of any of this kind of stuff, right? It has to do with we were able to see how much we're isolating the Russian regime right now because we need to do so economically, politically, and diplomatically. And what are the impacts also on our society? How much we're seeing potential regime change in Russia. The goal is definitely to do that, to weaken Russia's ability to launch very difficult attacks against Ukraine. We want also to make sure that Putin and his enablers are held to account. Like, this is insanity. This is fucking nuts. You've lost your goddamn mind if you're saying this kind of shit in public, openly, so everyone can hear you. Like, we are the Nazis. It's just straight up the case. Like, we are the fucking Nazis. Yeah, Adam, I don't think anybody's looking at Paul Joseph Watson and being like, I feel like you're the one that's bringing attention to it. Like, if it hadn't been for this conversation, I honestly don't know who this guy is. Like, I brought up this article because of the quote. That it's something that she said. Like, that's all. And I genuinely don't care, and I don't think it's going to send anybody down a pipeline. Transylvanian, one of my chat messages must have got deleted for you. Yeah, that's been happening to lots of people. I was talking about the article about the recent bank crash by Michael Hudson on Ben Norton's website. Yeah, I'm going to listen to that tonight. Because Michael Hudson is very prescient. I love the way that he talks about things. He talks about the financial system in America as a parasite, that it's parasiticized, that he was the first guy who really pointed out to me that the financial system is a fake economy, and they call it that. Well, they don't call it a fake economy, but they call the real economy a real economy, right? So that implies that the financial system is a fake economy, because it is. It's a completely fake economy that's due to collapse. And when it collapses, it's going to go down in flames, man. It's going to be fast. John, that's a really good idea, unless I'm there when there's a military conflict. Yeah, that's the thing, Bread Bunny. Like, just watch. You'll move to Taiwan, and then China will invade. And it'll be like a long, protracted war. Hey, you could become a war correspondent and discuss the war from your perspective on the ground. Wouldn't that be great, Bread Bunny? You'd be in the middle of a war, talking about a war while it was happening all around you. What a great way to live. Marcus says, crypto is functionally the currency of the third world. There's Venezuelans making more playing video games for Bitcoin than they could working any local job. I mean, that's an interesting take. I can't... Like, the Venezuelan currency has been so devalued. I will, Command Genius. I will, for sure. For sure I will. The Venezuelan currency has been so successfully devalued that, like, even Bitcoin looks appealing. You know what I mean? And the only reason why Bitcoin has any value, or any of these cryptos have any value for people in the third world, is because there's still a good amount of first world dummies that are willing to put a bunch of money into it. Right? So getting a hold of some of this, it actually does turn into money for them if you're in a bad situation. It doesn't mean that crypto is like the future or anything. It just means that, like, poor kids in third world countries are getting money from rich people. That's the process of the transfer. Transylvanian, I guess I'm more jaded than you when it comes to comments like this by officials. The things the Poles and the other U.S. puppets in the Baltic pseudo-states have been saying are way more unhinged. Yeah, but you sort of expect that. That's the thing. I mean, I guess that's the thing about this, you know? Excuse me, guys. Sorry. Oh, goodness. The Major, she isn't very jolly. The thing that really gets me about this comment is not that they are saying it to each other. It's that they're saying it out loud. That's the thing. That what that indicates to me is that our government has become unhinged. I think that's really, like, you expect far right, essentially fascist governments in former Soviet states and like pseudo states that are propped up by the US government to say crazy unhinged shit. You expect that. But to hear similar things come out of, like, the Canadian government, like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like we're not some kooky banana republic. We're not like a group of Nazis that are being funded by the United States, holding a state together by fiat force. We have the theory of a democracy in our society. We have sort of this tradition of believing that we are rational people, but this woman is standing up as the Canadian foreign minister and saying this shit, and she's not being fired. Like, she's not being fired for this complete unhinged take. That as far as anybody should be concerned, the Liberals are basically just openly admitting that, yeah, it's totally cool to act like Nazis on the world stage. That's a completely rational position to take. That yeah, Nazism is the way forward for us, for sure. That's the thing to do. Yeah, Canada recognized President Guaido as the president of Venezuela and then quietly stepped it down when the Americans did, because now we need Venezuelan oil. Yeah, it almost collapsed this week with the bank runs. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. That story's not over, right? That story's not over. But the lesson, of course, is from the banks is that who cares? We're just going to get bailed out, right? That's the lesson. If you are like me and interested in understanding economics and finance, but not super knowledgeable on the technical side, you may need to listen to the interview twice. Well, yeah, Michael Hudson's very robust, and he doesn't shy away. He's, that's what I really like about Richard Wolff. Richard Wolff does a really good job of bringing things down to a level that the common man can understand. That he doesn't speak in a technical language. He tries to find metaphors, and he tries to find ways to get the point across. Richard Wolff has an interview with Chris Hedges that I'm also keen on listening to. Transylvanian Hudson. Yeah, don't go to Taiwan just yet. Yeah, Hudson compresses a ton of info in a very short span of time. It's hard to keep up, but very informative. Absolutely. Uberlurd. We got to talk about this name, dude. Uberlurd. Like, we just had the Dark Lord in here, and now we've got Uberlurd with, like, what looks like a baby as an icon, like a cartoon baby. Just beautiful, dude. Just absolutely beautiful. You might want to think about updating this a little bit. I'm just saying. I know this might be a hot one, so I'll ask at face value. Have you browsed our collapse? Yeah, I pay attention to our collapse and been disappointed the people completely missing the point of why it's happening. I'm not disappointed about people missing the point of why it's happening in our collapse. I think that there is a wide array of opinion. The Marxist perspective gets play, right? Marxists don't get banned from there. And at this point, that's good enough for me. That as long as the Marxists are allowed to be Marxists, then it's fine. That what's really scary about what's happening on Reddit is that you just get offhand banned for even talking about Marx on many subreddits. The only subreddit that seems to be, I shouldn't say the only one because there are a bunch, but for some reason, our late stage capitalism is pretty heavily Marxist and is allowed to exist. And so I don't really know what thread they're winding, but like Jen Zedong got quarantined, right? So Reddit is obviously aware of these places and obviously knows that they need to do something about it. But I also think that what's interesting about what's happening is that I also do think that there are a lot of people and a lot of capitalist types even that are starting to really understand, like, yeah, something's going wrong. Something's going wrong. And we simply cannot afford to just say to people we don't necessarily agree with, yeah, get the fuck out of here, you dumb commie. Because maybe those communists are right because of how dramatically wrong things are going. And that you're starting to see more and more voices and more people actually standing up and actually saying, like, we gotta figure this out. Like, what's interesting to me about what's happening in today's climate is that there's a lot of capitalists. There's a lot of people in the higher top echelon who are bewildered by this. They don't understand what's happening. And they want to understand what's happening. But they don't want to grab on, or they're incapable of grabbing on to the only answer that actually matters, which is a Marxist analysis of what's occurring. Because if they grabbed onto that, they would recognize, oh, I've got to become a class traitor, right? And wouldn't that be amazing if that happened? Like, imagine if, like, Mark Zuckerberg put together that the collapse of American society is happening on Marxist principles and started to fund, like, a vanguard party in order to foment a revolution. You know, we ended up with, like, Supreme Chancellor Zuckerberg, who I'm sure would absolutely run the country based on Marxist principles. Venezuela created a cryptocurrency backed by oil to evade the sanctions and be able to buy food and medicine. Well, that's different. That's not really what cryptocurrencies is, right? Like the idea of cryptocurrency is that it's not state-backed, or at least that's traditionally what it's been. That if what Venezuela does is create a digital currency backed by its own oil in order to, as you say, evade the sanctions, then that's just creating a new currency. Right? Which I think it should do. And I'm glad to... Isaac, do you have an article for that? Is there something I can search up to see more about that? Because I actually think that's very clever. I just don't know anything about it. Diego Alcazar coming in. And I took that personally. You know, which part? Just joking about banana republics. Yeah. You mean like America? Yeah, fantastic, Uberlord. Yeah, will you expand on what people are missing? Yeah, I think missing might have been the wrong word. It's a perpetuation of toxic individualism there. Yeah, you're right. That definitely persists. Yeah, the I'll just eat my neighbors types. Yeah, and Uberlord, like, I talk at length on this channel about what I consider to be the three pillars of the collapse of Western civilization. And the three pillars of the collapse of Western civilization are the worship of money is at the top, and then the two pillars at the base of it, holding it up, is the worship of the individual and the worship of stupidity. That we have become, and I'll talk about the worship of the individual, because I spent a lot of time talking about the worship of stupidity and the worship of money. The worship of the individual, we have become so accustomed to the concept of individualism, and that everything needs to be individualized, and capitalism has divided us along individualist lines, so that when we are confronted with an issue that requires collective force, we can't, because all of our solutions boil down to individualizations. And it's become innate and natural for us to do so. It's difficult for us as Westerners to actually perceive and think about things collectively and to come up with collective ways to understand these things. And because everything turns into a conversation about how, oh, that person just needs to do that thing. That this is a moral failing on the behalf of that individual. And there's no discussion whatsoever about any kind of collective force or any kind of collective thing at all. That collectivism is not in the ethos of the West. And it's this worship of the individual that allows us to continue driving towards our own destruction collectively. Because it's the crabs in the bucket, right? That you're scrabbling to get out of the bucket, and you're going to pull people down who may be successfully doing so. And if you manage to get out of the bucket, then you're going to do everything you can to keep others from also getting out of the bucket. And so everybody just stays fighting one another, and it's all an individualist pursuit. And the worship of the individual is one of the pillars of the worship of money, because that's the measurement. The only measurement that anybody actually cares about is money. And if you have a lot of money, you're a good person. You're a person who's worth listening to. And it doesn't matter if you're like a sex trafficker like Andrew Tate. It doesn't matter if you're like a pedophile rapist like all these guys going to Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island, right? If you have money, you're inherently good. And of course, the only way we can maintain this ideology is through the worship of stupidity. And that trifecta, what I call the unholy trinity of the capitalist death cult, is the reason why our society is going into decline and into collapse. And if we want to get out of this situation we have found ourselves in, we need to insist that there are collective solutions, that there are institutions that we can interact with and change structurally, that we should care about something other than money, and that we should stop being so fucking stupid. Transylvanian, most Marxist subs on Reddit only accept imperialism-compatible critiques of capitalism. Yeah. Jen Zedong was the exception with actually having principled anti-imperialist line. Yeah, look what happened. It got quarantined. Yeah, they couldn't ban it because they didn't have a reason to ban it. They didn't actually have an argument to ban it, so they only quarantined it. And it still persists. I'm still in there. China plus Russia plus oil Gulf rich countries, including Iran, equals new world order. I think that's right, Tinker. Good opportunity to say like, share, subscribe, guys. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you share it around. Make sure you cut it up. Do you want? Clip it. I don't give a shit. Send it out into the world as much as you can. And be sure, if you've got $1 jangling around in that pocket, if you want me to end up doing this full time, if you want me to become a political radical, doing things in the political system and actually confronting people in positions of power and actually asking tough questions to people, if you want me to go to the mayor's executive council meeting and scream at them, make sure you donate to the Patreon. Even $1 would help, and if you're only donating $1, maybe think about making it $2. Big thanks to the people who are supporting me. I really appreciate it, guys. Rah rah Rasputin. The Petro, or the Petromonade, the Petromoneda, launched February 2018, is crypto token issued by the government of Venezuela. Yep. Sounds just like a digital currency. Like, they're calling it crypto, but if it's backed by the Venezuelan government and it's backed by the oil that the Venezuelan government has, that makes it different than crypto, right? Like, crypto's not backed by anything. Crypto's just the idea of a digital thing. So that's the reason why it doesn't work and why it's not worth anything. Yeah, you will struggle to find communist or socialist subs on Reddit that do not repeat imperialist propaganda about Russia or China. It's true. It is actually true. Like, it's really wild to see Western leftists essentially become CIA shills the second you're talking about Russia or China. Our collapse is full of preppers. Yeah, I think that's probably right. I don't think preppers have thought about gunning down starving kids coming on their property long for food. Yeah. What happened to Jen Zedong? I was banned for being critical of the vaccine compliance narrative and haven't been back since. It got quarantined, which means that you can't just find it. You have to be invited to it. That it still exists as a community, so the people who are there can still post and still see each other and do that kind of thing. But you can't see how many people are actually subscribed to it, and you can't see how many. And so it's all very, like, all of the features of it have been really diminished. Yeah, it's interesting seeing what's going on with the vaccine compliance narrative, right? Like I've been saying it for a while, man. Like, it would really behoove our society to really sit down and have really frank and serious, like, in a very truth and reconciliation sort of a way, have really frank conversations, because I think that there's a lot of fear and skepticism on all sides, and it would be really good for us to be able to air a lot of this stuff, because I think that what happens and what has happened is that everybody's kind of screaming into their own little bubble, and whenever I step into those bubbles to take a look at what's going on in the bubble, people have interesting things to say on all sides. And I feel like there's just a lot of misunderstanding going on. And also a lot of just unwillingness to admit that a lot of what was going on was because of fear. And I also think that, the capitalist system benefits from it. It benefits from keeping people in their bubbles and keeping people not communicating with one another. So it's not really going to happen, but I wish it would. No job is too big, no pup is too small. Good to see that guy. My opinion is Reddit is one of the biggest echo chambers, full of both pushing narratives, full of propaganda, bots. Yeah, I think that's all right. I think that's true. You know, that like the it is at least trying to be a aggregation, but like it's pretty obvious that it gets taken over by corporate power and by bots uh, uh, during periods of crisis. It's pretty obvious that that happens. You can see it pretty clearly during election seasons. That's when it gets the most obvious, because all of the sudden you have all of these like pro Hillary Clinton people who like even the month before people were like, yeah, Hillary Clinton, can you believe this is going to be the person who's running? Like she's this person or that person, and they're pointing like, and like maybe somebody would be like, well, but you know, at least she did this, and there's this thing that's kind of all right. But then all of a sudden, like on the lead up to the election, you get just like a huge upswing of just like dyed in the wool, like Hillary's the greatest, and you if you're saying what you're saying, you can't be taken seriously, right? There should be a section there, Uberlord, where you can put in whatever you'd like. It should exist. People do it, so I assume that it can be done. And thanks, Uberlord. I appreciate that, bud. I really do. I appreciate that you're even looking at it, honestly. Who knew that the way to get money was to ask for it? Who knew? What a beautiful world we live in. You just need to ask for things. You're just asking for a handout. That's what you're doing. You're just asking for a handout. You can't win with these guys, man, because they're not interested in winning. They're interested in maintaining the status quo. So here's a great article taking this moment of us talking about Reddit to say rip Aaron Schwartz. From Ukrainska Pravda. Russian army to be replenished with 400,000 new contract service personnel. The Russian Defense Ministry will start new recruitment of professional soldiers to the Russian army from the 1st of April, their aim being to add 400,000 new recruits into the army. As Radio Svoboda reported, the Russian Defense Ministry has sent documents to the regions indicating the number of people with whom contracts should be signed. Radio Svoboda noticed that several Russian regional media outlets immediately published the total number of contract service personnel needed to replenish the Russian army. It was noted that Russia planned to recruit 400,000 such soldiers. Radio Svoboda indicated that the main part of the work will be carried out by military enlistment offices, and governors will be responsible for the implementation of the plan. It was also reported that 10,000 people should be recruited for professional service in Chelyabinsk and Sverdlovsk. Come on, Russia. Come on, Russia. Have you ever heard of vowels, Russia? Jesus. Sverdlovsk. Oblasts of the Russian Federation, and 9,000 more in Perm-Krog. Conrad says the return of the Soviet Union? I don't think so. I'm not sure about that. I will say this, and this is, I'm not often, I like to tell the truth about what's been going on in Ukraine on this stream, and I am not sure that this is such a great thing. That what we are actually seeing, like from the straight up Russia and the Ukrainian war, like this means Russia wins the Ukraine war. Like Ukraine can't recruit any more forces for itself. Its own personnel and its own forces are depleted. It's put as many people on the field as it possibly can. The NATO nations can't really send any more troops. That the foreign fighters that were going to go already went, and it's not like NATO is training up 400,000 people. It's not like America is training up tons and tons of people. America is actually struggling to fill its recruitment ranks, right? That be very skeptical about what you read there. This is a fair comment from Transylvanian, and you're right. I should bear in mind this is a neo-Nazi adjacent Ukrainian propaganda outlet. So is Radio Svoboda. So be very skeptical what you read there. But the idea that Russia is increasing its enlistment has always been on the table, right? A big reason why Russia is pushing forward is because it's been able to recruit. And when it did the major recruitment of 100,000 people, right? That was, or was it 200,000 troops? It was done with, like, sure, there was a little bit of resistance, but those people got recruited, they got sent, and it's not surprising or at all unrealistic to believe that Russia will do it again. And if Russia does it again, like, where are we going to get more troops from? Where are we going to get troops from? Soviet Union, that's funny. I have Russian friends in Chelyabinsk. They moved to Turkey 6 months ago and would have refused to fight in what they call a stupid... It is a stupid war. Like, that's absolutely the truth, John. I'm never going to deny that. Are we there, Soviet yet? That's hilarious, dude. Like, this is a war that did not need to happen. And I don't think you've ever heard my take on Ukraine, John. So I'm just going to lay it out. I've only got 4 people on TikTok right now, so why not? This gets widely talked about by people like John Mearsheimer, who lays it out fairly well. You can see Oliver Stone's documentary on this. That what happens in Ukraine is that the United States, in its goal of pushing NATO towards Russia's border, to, at the end of the day, foment regime change, as we finally have just admitted openly, that over the course of 30 years, America has been steadily moving towards Russia's border through NATO, that NATO has been encroaching, it's NATO encroachment. Well, in 2014, NATO overthrew the Ukrainian government in a coup where they fueled Nazi street gangs, which end up becoming a battalion in the Ukrainian military called the Azov Battalion, who then go into the Donbass region and start a war there. And that this is the thing that the West gets completely wrong about what was happening about how the Ukrainian war started. That we believe the Ukraine war started when Putin invaded. The Ukraine war started in 2014 when the Azov Battalion, the neo-Nazis that we were funding, went into the Donbass and started shelling them. That's when it started. And that Putin didn't start a war. He's trying to end a war. And of course it's a stupid war. Americans are doing it. Right? And why are they doing it? For expansion, so that they can get access to more resources, so they don't need to do diplomacy and trade, so they can just have access to markets, so they can balkanize Russia and steal its resources. What America has always done. What America has always done. And when Russia invaded, we did a big sanction regime, right? Well, it's backfired. It's backfired. It's hurt Europe more than it hurt Russia. That Russia has just pivoted over to China. That's what Russia did. And we also have the Americans blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline to prevent Russia from getting natural gas into Europe and forcing the Europeans to get their gas from America at like 3 times the price. And like, it's been a complete backfire. And what it's doing to Europe is that it's militarizing everybody. It's making everybody go crazy. You're seeing an upswing of fascists. You're seeing like literally fascists getting elected in places like Italy. Like it's difficult to believe that Europe will not collapse into another war with itself, as it has done previously in the past, because capitalists can't resolve conflict without war. Yep. Imagine Paul Joseph Watson covering anything of substance. What a world to live in. Yep. That's the thing. Like that's why I don't mind getting sources from wherever, right? Because we're getting to a point now where it's all crazy. Like it's all nuts. Yep. The stupidity is on our side for sure. Russia is being pretty smart. Yeah, because Russia's looking at what's happening and they're responding. We're literally moving forward as if we're just like, we're the greatest in the world. No one will ever fight back against American hegemony. Like, that's how we're acting. And we're going to pay pretty dearly for it, if you ask me. Like, for God's sakes, like, here's a thread from a woman by the name of just Sarah. This should be a bigger story everywhere. The CIA toppled former Prime Minister Imran Khan because he opposed the U.S. drone campaign operating inside Pakistan. And today, the army attacked his home and moved to arrest him to prevent his participation in the upcoming elections. Yeah, America really loves democracy. No base will be allowed to the U.S. by Prime Minister Imran Khan so long as he is in power, a senior Pakistani cabinet minister told TRT World. Like, USA, USA, USA. Will Big Daddy Vlad ever fully invade the Ukraine? Tune in next time, folks. In the hit TV show, The Earth is Screwed. Yeah, the Earth is screwed. For sure it is. Like, the truth about the situation is that America should step down. It should acknowledge that it's screwed the pooch. It should acknowledge that it's fucked up. Like, it can't get itself out of this. Like, that's the thing. It can't get itself out of this. Like, it's fucked this one up. Like, this is a huge fuck up. John, I agree 100%. NATO wants complete economic control of the Dnieper Black Sea and the gas oil monopoly, and Russia knows that will weaken them tremendously. Yeah, it's ugly. For sure it is. Like, for sure it is. You can't, like... And the saddest part of this story, if you ask me, like the saddest part of this story, of what's going on today in Ukraine, is that the Russians so very clearly wanted to become part of the international-based rules order. That they wanted it so badly. That I've come to see that what was happening in Russia was that the Russians, post-World War II, the Nazis lost, but fascism won. That post-World War II, communism as a force was tired and depleted. That Stalin and his guard was old and traumatized from World War II, and that the citizenry was traumatized and had to go through a period of reconstruction and rebuilding post-World War II. And that when you get to the end of Stalin's life, I think that you end up with a central government and a central organization that is thinking to itself, do we really want to pit ourselves against the West again? Do we really want to continue moving forward with this idea that we should pit ourselves against the West? And once Stalin goes, I think that Khrushchev makes a very strong case and demonizes Stalin so thoroughly in order to try to push communism out of the discourse so that they can begin to integrate themselves with the international community. And for a very brief period of time, it looked like it might happen. That the real heartbreak about what has happened in Putin's life is that he came to power believing that he was going to be part of the international order, that the work of Gorbachev, Yeltsin, Brezhnev, all of these guys, was to steadily move the Russian economy and the Russian people towards integration with the international rules-based order. That they come to believe that it is better for them to integrate with their previous enemy than it is to stand alone on communist principles. And by the time I gotta find these pictures again because they really tell an interesting story. When Putin first comes to power, there's this really great series of pictures that I saw where he goes around and is introduced to the rest of the world leaders. So at the time, you're talking about Queen Elizabeth. I believe, I forget which president was in power. It's in 2000, right? And he looks as pleased as punch. He's just smiling from ear to ear the entire time because he genuinely believes, and I really do think that there's a good period of time where Putin genuinely believed that he was going to become the leader who finally docked the ship, that he was going to be the leader, and that the story of Vladimir Putin as the leader of the Russian people was going to be docking the ship into the port of the international rules-based order, that he was going to become part of the G8, and that he was part of the G8 for a period of time, and that he was going to become part of the international community. And very steadily over time, over his lifetime, just to interrupt 1 second, Cotton. This is a reporting from Russian Radio Svoboda, so just take it with a bit of a grain of salt, okay? We'll see what happens come April 1st, but this is the reporting that's happening. I'm going to move away from this one just for that reason. That Vladimir Putin's very steadily over time, you watch a man steadily recognize and steadily realizing that he will never become, and Russia will never become, part of the international rules-based order. That Russia will never be seen as a peer. It will always be seen as an enemy and always be seen as a rival. That I think it really begins with the invasion and the destruction of Libya. And then you have the conflict of Georgia, the Syrian conflict, and I think the nail in the coffin is finally when Putin applies to join NATO. That Russia actually says to NATO, we could just join you, and that would put to bed any of these fears of NATO encroachment, right? Because you can't encroach towards us if we are actually part of your organization. Reminding everybody that NATO was created in order to destroy the Soviet Union. So let's alleviate the tension. Let's let Russia join NATO, and then NATO will be, and then Russia will be part of it, which is their goal, to integrate themselves with the international rules-based order. And NATO declined. And I think that was the end of it for Putin. That Putin finally said, okay, it's over. We will never join the rules-based order. We will never do that. And from that moment forward, I think that Putin has always been operating with the understanding, and has been communicating with other world leaders with the understanding that he needs to pivot away from the West. And so Putin becomes a very interesting leader over this period of time, because he's the guy who wanted to dock at that port but had to turn away and was forced to turn away. And that's, I think that is going to be his legacy. That his legacy as the leader of Russia is going to be that he had to pivot and change the direction of Russia. And people will debate forever. I don't think there'll ever be a consensus on, well, is he an imperialist? Is he a czarist? Is he like what's is he a neoliberal? Is he this? Is he that? And my general opinion of Putin at this moment is that he's a little bit of all of those, because at the end of the day he's just a Russian. And that he's always acting for what he thinks is good for the people of Russia. And certainly he wants his own wealth. Certainly he wants his own prestige. Certainly he wants those things. But he doesn't want to see Russia destroyed. He believes that Russia it needs to be strong. He believes that Russia needs to be powerful. And he's and to me, that is the backbone of his ethos. That he doesn't believe in neoliberalism. He doesn't believe in imperialism. He doesn't believe in the Tsars. He doesn't believe in any of that. He believes in Russia. And at this stage in the game, that seems to be good enough. Because, like, that makes him better than, I'd say, every American president in the last 50 years. Like, Bill Clinton didn't give a shit about America. George Bush didn't give a shit about America. Obama didn't give a shit about America, right? Like, these presidents don't care about America. They care about their own weird little fiefdom, and their money that they can make, and they care about the military-industrial complex that they serve. Like, they don't give a shit about America. Like, Bill Clinton, certainly not. Like, can you imagine giving a shit about a country while impoverishing its citizens on purpose and celebrating it? Like, literally gutting the welfare state, saying, yeah, all these people will be poor. God bless America. Like, yeah, God better bless America, because God knows it's not going to be Bill Clinton that does it. Like, if Putin did the shit that Bill Clinton did, we'd never shut up about it. But apparently we're supposed to just completely ignore all that. And that's what makes it the... Yeah, they also tried to join the European Union, exactly. Yeah. Arguably, that small minority of liberal fifth columnists leaving Russia has been a boon to Russia and consolidating internal support to the current struggle it is waging. Yeah, I mean, the people of Russia... I am more or less of the opinion that Putin had no choice. That if Putin hadn't have moved forward and done what he did in Ukraine, that the people of Russia would have deposed him and put somebody in who would have. I think it was getting to that kind of a crisis. You had something like 85% support for it amongst the populace. Because there were Nazis shelling ethnic Russians on the border of Russia. Like, I'm more or less of the opinion that you would think this way too. That the only reason why people are so, like, rah Ukraine and stand with it is because they're clueless. They have no idea what's actually going on. And that if they did know what was going on, they would go, oh my God, we've got to defeat these Nazis. Right? Like, that's what's going on. And the support for the war, of course, takes a dip in the polls down to like 68% or 67%, something like that, when Putin has to do a mobilization. Because I think the people of Russia were sort of hoping Putin would just get in there and dust it up, right? And Putin and his leadership actually did go in there, if you recall. They went in there believing it was going to be a dust-up. They thought that they were going to go in there and the Ukrainians were going to surrender, is what they thought was going to happen. And that's why they went in from all sides, right? If you remember, they went in from all sides. They were like trying to surround Kiev and like push in all at once. And they just started to experience real entrenched warfare. People who were there to fight to the death and were not going to surrender and not going to give up. and found that Zelensky was a useful stooge for the Nazis, and has always been a useful stooge for the Nazis, and and so they had to withdraw from Kiev and from the west of Ukraine, and move into the Donbass region, which is their stated reason for being there. And now they're and because they finally realized, oh, we are going to have to pull these Nazis out one by one. Like there is no political solution to this. The Zelensky regime is not going to declare a surrender. Like none of that is going to happen. We are literally going to have to create a line and push that line towards Kiev, pulling Nazis out one by one. And so I think that demoralized the people of Russia, rightfully so. I can understand why the people of Russia would be demoralized over that. I would want it to be a clean dust up too. I would hope that the Zelensky regime would declare a surrender. I would hope that it would be a quick military operation. I would hope all of those things. But the support is still persistent at about 60%. So it's still a majority issue. And I think the Russians have set in, and they understand that fundamentally, I think the position of the Russians is, as a blanket generalization, is this sucks a whole lot, but it must be done. That they're not happy it's happening. They're not pleased with what's going on. They're not that happy with how Putin has handled it, but they understand that it must be done and that it's difficult to do. So this is going to be something that the people of Russia, and this is something I'm a bit concerned about. I'm a bit concerned about Russia becoming more militarized. I'm a bit concerned about Russia militarizing itself and becoming more militant, because you can get military that takes over your government. And once a military takes over a government, then all solutions become military solutions. And the concern that has, of course, is that this is not going to stay as a Ukrainian issue, that this will spread throughout Eastern Europe. That's the concern. And that's not necessarily something I support. NATO lied to Russia. Yep. One of the promises Gorbachev was assured during the reunification of Germany was that NATO would not spread membership east of Germany. Yep. Transylvania says, I have a lot of problems with Putin, but one thing I've never understood is people accusing him of doing what he's doing to enrich himself. Yep. If that's what he wanted to do, all he had to do is be compliant. That's exactly right. The Western imperialists reward their Pompadour puppets quite handsomely. He could even make a ton of money just giving pro-Western speeches after leaving office. Yep, exactly. That's why I fundamentally say that Putin is a Russian. That he's driven by you can try to peg him as, and there's probably a coloring of many different isms that exist within the ethos of him, but first and foremost, he is a Russian, and he's not going to betray the people of Russia. That he could say, well, I'm going to be the king of Russia, right? Fine. Or I'll be the CEO of Russia, or I'll be the biggest landowner in Russia, or any of that kind of stuff. But it's in Russia, and he is a Russian, and he's not going to betray the people of Russia. And that's something that I think is not well understood. Like, he's not like Americans. Right? He's not going to betray his own citizens for his own personal enrichment. Marcus, Bakhmut looks like hell on earth. I've never seen such intense fighting with modern equipment. Yeah, that's what happens when you get Nazis in the field, dude. Like this is why the whole narrative of oh, it's okay to fund Nazis because they're just fodder and they'll fight. Like, that's not how it works. Like, you can't negotiate with Nazis because when push comes to shove, like, they're not going to negotiate with you. They're like, you take a look at what's going on with Zelensky. I actually think it's quite credible and quite believable that Zelensky was genuine when he ran his election, and that the people of Ukraine were happy to see a man like Zelensky running on this idea of ending the war. Zelensky ran on ending the war. That's what he ran on. He went to the front line and ordered the people, the military men, to pull out, to pull back. And he was told to fuck off. That it's very credible. I haven't seen the smoking gun article on this because it's a very insider kind of a story, but it's very credible to believe that Zelensky is essentially a captive leader. That he was elected by the people of Ukraine, but it really is the military, i.e. the Nazis, who have control. And it's very credible to believe that these guys are looking at Zelensky being like, do what we say or we'll shoot you. Because that's how Nazis actually operate. That Zelensky is not going around banning opposition parties, rounding up communists, causing all of these problems because he himself is a Nazi. He's doing so because he's got a Nazi gun in his back. That he's a captive leader. And that they're not just going to let this guy out of their sight. And they're not just going to let this guy go. Like, as if Zelensky has somewhere to go. And in the meantime, like, yeah, where would Zelensky go? Right? He can't go to Russia. Certainly. He can't flee to any of the NATO nations. They need him. NATO needs him to be there. Right? Where's he going to go? So he's stuck. He's stuck with a Nazi rifle in his back. I don't think Russia was planning to take Kiev. I think that was more of a staging operation. I think that what they thought was going to happen and what they hoped was going to happen is that they were going to come in with a big military force and Zelensky was going to wave the white flag. That's what I think. And it is that at the end of the day, I think it really just comes down to people misunderstanding Nazis. And really misunderstanding the ethos of like true dyed-in-the-wool Nazis. That they're not going to accept a white flag. They're not going to accept that. They are Nazis. They are here for the fight. That they want the fight. That it's we will fight to the last man. We will not lay down our weapons. We will not surrender. I wish I could get paid millions for making a little speech no one will ever remember. Yeah, exactly. Silly not to believe Kiev was a target, though. It was just a sustainable operation. Not a sustainable operation without established supply lines. Yeah. I just think they thought that they were going to sweep in like a blitzkrieg kind of a way, and that kind of shocking move was going to force a political resolution. That's really what I think that they were trying to achieve. They were just trying to achieve a political resolution through a strong show of military force. And it just didn't work out. Only takes betraying your countrymen's interests, selling your soul, yeah? The goal behind the operation was conducted the first month was to force Kiev to the negotiating table, yeah? That was achieved. Yeah. Something about this theory sounds too optimistic. But sure, it was a short-term operation that could provide shock enough to surrender. Yeah, that was sort of the hope, right? That was, it's the only thing that makes any sense. Like, it is the only thing that makes any sense. Like, why operate that way unless you thought that's what was going to happen? Like, you couldn't have believed that you were going to actually take Kiev, right? Like, they went in there with something like 300,000 men. Like, they didn't have the manpower to be able to take a city like Kiev, right? And I think Marcus, you said it pretty straightforwardly, that it was the fact that their supply chains were getting attacked constantly, that the Ukrainians were doing a good job of disrupting supply lines, and the Russians were just too spread out, and so they needed to recalibrate, get into the territory they were there to actually get, and start defending that position from there, and that's where we are now. That's where we are now. Ukraine is a captive country, has been since at least a century. The Pale, the Cossack Tartar raids, the Crimean slave trade. It's just a geographically difficult position. It's true. It's absolutely true. Ukraine is an invention of the 20th century. It didn't exist before then except as a contested borderland between various powers. Yeah. And that's also true. Yeah, Ukraine is a very... Here's all I know. 75% of Ukrainians would like to go back to, or say that life was better under communism. More people in Ukraine say that life was better under communism than Russians. Like, so much for your Holodomor bullshit, right? So much for the whole, like, oh my god, Stalin killed millions of people intentionally on purpose. What those people saying that they thought communism was better? Is that what we're talking about? Is that what we're talking about? Taking a capital quickly reduces civilian casualties. No invading force really wants to murder every man, woman, and child in every village leading up to the capital. That's also another narrative that certainly Putin was talking about. Like, that they didn't want to just... Like, one of the things that comes out of the West is they say... They were very confused because how the West operates when they go into a region is that they level everything. That they systematically just level everything. They roll in their tanks, they roll in their fighter jets, they fly in their everything, and they just start leveling stuff, right? They just... And Putin didn't do that. And that really confused them. That Western commentators were like, why is he leaving buildings up? Why is he leaving infrastructure? Why is he leaving bridges up? Why isn't he blowing this stuff up? Right? Because that's what the West does. Yeah, Western people can't wrap their head around it. Look at it with the simplicity of playing a game of Risk. Yeah, there is a bit of that going on too. For sure. For sure. Well, guys, I think I've only got 5 minutes left, and I feel like I'm gonna call it for the night. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe. If you've got $1 jangling around your pocket, please think about donating. If you're only donating $2, maybe make it $3. If you're only donating $1, maybe make it $2. Thank you for all my Patreons. Thank you for your support, guys. Thank you for being here. For God's sakes, that's the most important part. Thank you for being here. Always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being, walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it. Good night, TikTok.